Okay, before we get going then, I've got to read out some the chair's announcements for hybrid planning committees. I think we're all quite aware of these, but I'll go through them now just to make sure. So, right, welcome everyone to the meeting. That includes the members of the public.
Nick, may I interrupt, please? I'm so sorry. Can I ask Alan, who's joined from home, to switch his video off, his camera, please? Thank you.
Right, thank you for that. I didn't see that. Right, cheers. Okay, here we go again. Okay. This meeting is taking place in the council chamber at Shepton Mallet, and we have members of the planning committee, officers, public speakers, and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded, even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, then please let me know now. No, doesn't look like anybody's upset. Members who have brought their own devices with them should ensure that their cameras are switched off, and very importantly, that their device microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting. Otherwise, this causes feedback on the council sound system. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak by the chair. It is not permitted for any other member of the public viewing the by Teams to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the planning committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and catch the attention of myself, the legal advisor Martin, or lead officers, or my vice chair, Tessa or Simon. When members in the chamber speak, remember to switch on your desk microphone so that all those in attendance and viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything. All contributions must be made verbally. Please call all mobile phones to be. Please can all mobile phones be set on silent. Thank you. Right, apologies. Now, I believe today we have two apologies. We have Councillor Boyden, who has been substituted by Councillor Heather Shearer, and we have Councillor Helen Kay, who has been substituted by Councillor Shane. Yep, and so we can move on from there, and we go from the minutes of the previous meeting. They will be available at the next meeting, and not this meeting. Oh, sorry, did you want to speak, Kerr? Okay, so yeah, so that bit is okay. So they will be available at the next meeting. I think Julie wants to speak, actually. I'll bring you in now, Julie.
Oh yeah, we've gone to the right thing this time. Julie Reader Sullivan, Assistant Director covering planning and economy for Somerset. You'll recall, those of you sitting over there and around the corner, that I'm asking for feedback on the planning committee process. This is so that we can review the processes since we became a new council in April. So please give your feedback. If you're here for more than one item, feel free to either note them first or just put general comments on the committee. Members of the committee, you will see that you have your questionnaires in front of you. Please do complete them at the end. It is really important and part of the process that was agreed as part of the Constitution review and the development of the new Constitution. And of course, as Councillor Cottle, I'm sure, said earlier when I had to nip out of the room, reminder about material planning considerations during the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. We can move on now to declarations of interest. Now, I believe that Councillor Martin, you have declaration of interest. Would you like to read them out, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm declaring an interest on the three initial items. In the case of the first item, Alfred Gillett Trust, I'm a trustee of the trust and I shall leave the room completely for the entirety of that consideration. On the portal, it's registered as to the nature of my other two interests. They are both relate to Shepton Mallet. Although I was on the planning committee of the town council for the multi-user path, it was over a year ago, and I had no idea at that point that I'd be on this committee at that point. So I'm not considering myself declaring an interest, and I will take full part. In the case of the Paul Street, I deliberately declared an interest when that came up at the Town Development and Planning Committee, so I consider myself free to take full part in that one. But I shall leave the room for the first item, as I said.
Thank you very much, Martin. Anybody else like to declare any interest? Benty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the application from the little school nursery, it is stated in the paperwork that the councillor has said that she is not on planning. No, I wasn't when I did that, which is several years ago when I first came to visit. I was not on planning, but now I am. So I really think that that whole paragraph should have been taken away, because that was part of what isn't anymore. So people might think, oh, she's sitting there on planning, so how come she's saying she wasn't? So I'm just making it absolutely clear that now I am on planning, but I wasn't back then.
Okay, thank you, Benty.
And when it comes to the rest of it, I have nothing to declare.
Yeah, I believe that's been noted. Yeah, so thank you. Okay, any more declarations of interest? No, we're all okay. Fine. So we'll move on to public question time. Do we have any? No, we don't have any public question time. So, okay, we're going to move on and we're going to take planning applications for the Grange at Farm Road Street. Now, I believe we're taking two in one go. Is that right? But we have to vote separately. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, thank you. Right. So, who is leading? Right, thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so as you mentioned, this is for two applications, the full application and the listed building consent application, which are both connected. So the description, as it's written there, is part demolition and replacement of existing buildings with a new two-storey building to connect the Grange and the barn, and alterations to the existing buildings and various landscaping across the site. And the development basically creates a new museum with a cafe and shop, and retains some of the offices and archive storage across the site that's already there. Since the officer report was put together, there's been a few amendments, so I was just going to quickly run through those updates for you. We've had the formal reconsultation response from Highways that confirms they have no objection, but they are requesting a Section 106 agreement to secure a travel plan obligation. We've also had the travel plan team audit, which feeds in that highway comment. Also, the lead local flood authority have confirmed that they have no objection, subject to conditions following the additional information that they've received. We've had a representation of support from Councillor Carswell. We've also had some additional information on the extract equipment, although I must say from officers' point of view, that's still very minimal, and it talks about two different options, so it doesn't satisfy us in terms of the heritage concerns, which are outlined in the report. And then there's also been a revised plan that deals with a procedural issue that really amounted to reason for refusal 2 on the full application. So that reason actually falls away now. So basically the the site layout plan, the red line was fairly tightly drawn. It didn't include the private access road originally, and that has been amended so that it's quite clear that it's all part of this one application. So here's the location plan. So I think most people are probably familiar with the site. So it's the Grange, which in terms of the listing includes the barn as well. So we've got the Grange and a link building and the barn. It's quite a large site adjacent to Clark's Village. And as you can see there on the location plan, there's a relationship with the car park to the north as well. The access road that I was referring to is just here. So this is a private access road, but that is now included in the application. Just an aerial photo to give you a bit more context in terms of what the site is. The existing site plan. So you've got the main Grange building here and the barn there. Also to note, the garden wall that is of concern to officers is in here. This is the existing garden wall that officers would like to be seen retained as existing, but the proposal is for it to be lowered. Here's some photos of the wall. So it's tucked behind this hedge currently. You can just see from that sort of higher view that you can see the top of the wall. Again, there's photos of the wall, and then this one shows you. I can't remember what date this is, forgive me, but it obviously shows that the wall's been there for some time. So here's the proposed site plan. So basically this central section, if I just quickly switch back to the existing site plan, these areas here are to be removed and replaced by those ones there. So it's demolition of quite a large link building with the new proposal. Again, the existing ground floor plans on the proposed. So you can see from the proposed, from the thickly bounded areas, those are the areas to be retained, or this area changes. Again, first floor plan existing and proposed. Just a photo of how the Grange looks currently, and the current link building. And then that's the CGI of what it would look like with the proposal. And then another CGI of the proposal. This is showing it with the reduced wall, the reduced garden wall, which is as per the application proposal. And that's with the wall as existing. So there's not a great deal of change there. Then we've got the existing and proposed elevations. So that's the elevation that faces like the restaurant avenue as you come into Clark's Village. And then that's the north elevation, so that faces towards the public car park and the Westway beyond. This is the link building from the rear of the building with the barn beyond. And the existing and proposed photos from that rear, facing to Barn Close, which is a residential development next door. Photos of the Grange from the southwestern corner. And then what the proposal, the existing and proposed, facing more towards the shops in Clark's Village, so Marks and Spencer's. So this is an elevation that wouldn't be very readily seen. So the officer recommendation is set out in the report pack is for refusal. As I mentioned at the beginning, due to the updates in terms of the widened red line application site plan and serving notice on the relevant landowner. The second reason for refusal has fallen away. So the main reason for refusal is in relation to the heritage harm that officers see in terms of both the wall and also the extract details. Just popping back, the extract equipment is proposed. Sorry. So a new extract is proposed in here. You can spot that. So these two windows are to what would be the new cafe, and in fact, yeah. Sorry, it's that window there. So there's proposed to be a new extract equipment, but we haven't got much detail. There's a proposal either for it to go through the window or through the fabric of the building, but we haven't got sufficient information to be satisfied on that. So, Chair, the reason for refusal, as mentioned, is due to the harm to the listed building, Grade 2 listed building. In terms of the full application, and then similarly on the listed building consent application, again, there's one reason for refusal, which again is due to the harm to the fabric of the building. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Very good. I believe that our first person to speak should be Councillor Liz Lysham, who is the division person member. Are you there, Liz?
I am indeed, Chair. I'm not in street, but I am with you, thanks to the miracle of Teams. If I may speak in support of this application, please, Chair. I have particular interest in the history of street. So it's history from the Jurassic era, where the ichthyosaurs that are mostly in storage in street, and some of which are in the National History Museum. I have always felt a sadness that they're not publicly available except on a few dates in a year, if you're lucky. They used to be in a museum in Crispin Hall many years ago. They are a fascinating part in our country's history, equal to Lyme Regis. So Street was a very important centre of understanding of the Jurassic era at a time when people believed that the world had been created much more recently. The Victorian era history is fascinating. The Industrial Revolution in Street and the part that the Quakers played as employers was fascinating then and is still fascinating now, and how the employers considered the physical and mental health of all their employees and the employees' extended families. So that is an unusual history, and it extends across Somerset to Wellington, where the Fox brothers ran their mills as well, and the contemporary era and the beginning of outlet shopping. So I'm seeing this project as bringing those three eras together. So from many millions of years ago to within 200 years of history and our contemporary history. So bringing it together in a project that would be open to the public in a way that the Grange has never been open to the public before. So it's had a fascinating history, that building, including housing refugees on a number of times, refugees from different countries. But it's not been a family home. It dates back to William Strode, who came from Cranmore. It dates back to the Abbey, when the Abbey had that massive estate, of course, in the whole of central Somerset. And the relationship with Clark's Village is, I believe, could be a symbiotic relationship for this museum, so that people visiting the museum would visit Clark's Village, where we're seeing an extended hospitality offering coming too. And people visiting Clark's Village could be encouraged, as I'm sure they would be, to learn more about Street, which is a much more fascinating place than probably people realise. The car parking available in Street, I've always slightly jokingly referred to Street as the car parking capital of what was Mendip, because I remember getting some figures from the parking services, and actually more money was taken through the car park machines in Street than in the rest of what was Mendip put together. So there are car parks throughout Street that are within easy level walking distance, and there are also many bus routes through Street stopping very close to the site of the Grange and Clark's Village. Indeed, I may be one of only a few division members who has complaints in the inbox about too many buses. Most division members, of course, hear the exact opposite. So, Chair, I would like to speak in favour of this project and this application for the reasons that I have elaborated on. I believe that if there are concerns based on the historical elements of the site, that there must surely be ways. It cannot be beyond the wit of man and woman to find ways through, because the history of the building is incredibly important. Every stone of Blue Lias in Street is incredibly important and ties us back to the history that's given us the ichthyosaurs. I really hope, Chair, that there may be a way to find a satisfactory resolution to this application, so that people from all over the country and wider can actually come and enjoy that terrific history of Glastonbury, of Street, at the same time as the history of Glastonbury, which I know you know extremely well, and actually make this part of Somerset a real destination for people to spend more time. Thank you very much, Chair and Committee, for your time.
Thank you, Liz. Very interesting. And I've seen the Ichthyosaurus, that's the name, in the Natural History Museum in London. Yeah, thank you. Okay, next we go on to the applicant's agent, which I believe is Claire Phillips.
There you go.
Good afternoon, thank you. So I'm just going to focus on the two main points brought out. The first one is the wall. So I think we sent some photos of the wall. We consider it to be an ancillary feature to the Grange and the site as a whole. We don't know exactly the origins and its purpose, but from the AOS maps, it appears to have arrived in sort of mid-19th century. However, that could be representing the path as well. It's possibly a boundary wall between the Grange when it was split into two houses, and it could be possibly as part of the use when it was a farm to sort of pen in animals. We consider the wall to be of relatively low significance in comparison to the Grange building itself and the barns, because it is an ancillary feature to the main listing. In terms of the three heritage interests set out in the NPPF, the first one being the evidential and archaeological interest, we are only proposing to reduce the wall, not remove the wall, thereby not denying the ability to find out in the future what is below the wall, what the wall is for, if this further information can be found at a later date. The second point is in terms of historical and communal value. Again, we consider this to be low in the context of the Grange buildings as a whole. It is visible as you walk past the site, and it is a change, not a huge one, but nonetheless, we feel that the wall and that level change has a negligible contribution to passers-by in the context of the wider site. The third one, in terms of value, in terms of architectural or aesthetic value, once again, when compared to the rest of the site and the Grange, it is at low value when compared to the portico, the transom windows and other features as part of the main listing of the building. We're proposing to take the wall from about 1.6 metres, which is kind of about here on me, down to a height where you can see over it. This means that the site is properly connected as you arrive into the Grange. You can see where the entrance is. You can see the whole public realm space. You can see where your children are between the different sections of the garden, which is effectively sort of split into two between the new museum and this green space that we're trying to create. And we feel that there's significant public benefit to that. And in terms of the viability of the museum and the cafe space as an outdoor seating is quite key. I've also sent you some photos about kind of that arrival point, and it's really important when you come to a site, you know where you're going, and you've come to the main door and you don't get greeted by closed doors. For now, the barn is a locked door, and but it's quite a main entrance when you arrive. It kind of draws you to that door, or likewise to the rather lovely portico at the front of the Grange. That would be an obvious entrance. So the new extension, whilst it's quite large, it's actually deliberately trying to sort of be subservient to the existing building, set back, and our entrance is in the corner, which is quite key for the connecting of the different buildings. But it's really important, again, that you can see that space.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bring you to an end. You're
Sorry.
3 minutes. If you'd just like to wind up quickly, that would be fine.
The final one was just with regards to the extract vent. We sent two options because we're happy to work through that with conditions. It could either be through float glass, not blown glass, or it could be through the wall. It is a domestic scale vent. It's not a commercial flue. It's a very low level kitchen offer for a kiosk, and it's fundamental for the kitchen to be able to work and make sure we don't have moisture issues within the historic building.
Okay, thank you very much, Claire. The next person is Rosie Martin, who has 1.5 minutes. You'll have to be really quick.
Yeah, go 1.5 minutes, and then my colleague will also say for 1.5 minutes. So I'm the director of the Alfred Gillett Trust. Everybody understands the public benefit of green space, and this project will open up the gardens to the public. We want an oasis of calm in an urban setting that is street, but we do not want to be a hidden gem. We want people to know that they are welcome, and we want to look open, and we want to look accessible to all people. And the wall that Claire has described, it cuts the garden right in two, and it's difficult to see over. You saw Claire, she said it comes up to here on her. It's just not inviting. At its current height, you can't see the museum entrance clearly. You could say that we could put up signs, but from previous roles, I know very well that the great British public does not read signs. And too many signs around the gardens, they will also impact the gardens as well and the aesthetics. We want to be financially sustainable, and I'm convinced that by reducing the wall, this will increase visitor numbers and put to good use something that is currently inaccessible. Going on to the cafe vent, the cafe is an integral part to our financial sustainability plan, as well as our social environmental plans. And as Claire mentioned, it includes outdoor seating in what will be our wonderful and beautiful gardens. We're a charity. We talk about public benefit. Public benefit is absolutely at the core of our being. And we have so much to celebrate in Somerset, and we want our museum to be a must-see visitor attraction in the county. And we would be delighted.
Okay, Rosie, you're 1.5 minutes.
If you came and visited us.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, please.
Hello everyone, I'm Sam from the Alfred Gillett Trust. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us today. So the Alfred Gillett Trust is an independent charity. Our core purpose is to advance public education. And we do that through outreach with our historic collections. The collections themselves are about people, the people who made the shoes, the designers, the sellers, the wearers, and everyone in between, from the factory to the boardroom. And let's not forget those that uncovered the amazing ichthyosaur, internationally significant ichthyosaur collection. The museum will serve our communities and stakeholders and inspire learning, innovation and creativity. And we have wide support from our stakeholders, including Street Chamber of Commerce, Clarks Village and the Parish Council. We've consulted over 2,000 people as part of this project. We're committed to engagement and consultation, and not one person has said they wouldn't visit the new museum and what a difference it would make to their lives in Street. The Grange site itself has changed significantly over the centuries to grow and adapt and to meet the needs of our communities. And a new museum on this site is simply the next iteration of this site development. In line with the Somerset Council's priorities outlined in your own corporate plan for the coming years and strengthened by our community's conversations, we believe the new museum will contribute to a flourishing and resilient Somerset, which will help promote our county at a local, regional, national and international level, to showcase and celebrate our innovation and enhance a thriving education offer. We already work with local schools and national universities to deliver our charitable objectives, and this new museum will increase that offer and make it more robust. Can I end on one quote from the people that we're talking about here, the communities that matter, which is, "Well done, Alfred Gillett Trust. It was a fantastic idea and the community mural panels look fab. When the Shoemakers Museum is up and running, I know there will be lots of events like this. This museum will make an absolute difference to people's lives." Thank you.
Right, thank you, Samantha. Very interesting. Okay, we don't appear to have any other members from Street here in particular. Yeah, you live there. You represent Street. So we will open it up to all members now. And who would like to go first? Yes, Councillor Shearer, Heather, please.
Thank you so much, and thanks to the thanks to all of the speakers for the helpful introduction, and to the officer as well, Anna. Thank you so much for that. As Nick says, I'm a resident of Street, but I don't represent you formally for Somerset Council. But I am aware of the project and have been aware of the location, the venue. I think there's a couple of things strike me straight away. Not often do we have a big project like this or any kind of application where there's no objector. I want to point that out. There's been no one registering an objection coming to speak today, which is I'm pleased about. I'm happy to listen if other people have different views. I'm not coming here predetermined, but I do see this as a really important and useful addition to all of Somerset's leisure, heritage, tourism strategies. I think they all make sense. I was a little bit perturbed at first around some of the quite understandable questions as I saw them around the car park or the access, because one of the benefits of this is that hidden gem has actually been tucked away right next to Clark's Village and hundreds of car parking spaces. And I think, as a friend of mine keeps reminding me, we get 4.2 million visitors to Street through Clark's Village, and it'd be really good if some of those spent a bit more of their dollar in a charity rather than in a shop, and also spent longer in our village. You have to learn to call it a village all the time. So, and I think Liz made the point about. I'm not saying that the objections from our officers are small. They're important and they're significant, and you're doing the job that you need to be doing around protecting heritage. And I thank you for that. But I'd love to think there's a way through what feel now, after all of this time, like quite small objections. So if limited objections, they're not small, but if we could find a way through those, and if there's a way to work, say, with the extractor issue, I think I would really like to do that. That could be conditioned. It just seems, refusal seems quite a strong reaction and a finite finding reaction to something I hope we can find a way through. So I'm happy to listen to other people if they've got other ideas about how we can do this, or if somebody else objects to it, I'm happy to hear. But if we can find a way to make that a conditioned approval rather than a refusal, I'd be really happy to hear that.
Thank you, Heather. Martin.
I don't think anybody would doubt the cultural value of this project and needed to be persuaded necessarily. What we seem to be down to two items. We're discussing two items. I believe it was often suggested that the event could be negotiated, and therefore we're talking about the size of the wall being the only objection. That being so, I think I'd be in favour of it.
Thank you, Martin. Anybody else like to speak? Can I look for a proposal? Yes, Helen.
I'd be more than happy to actually. Oh, sorry, forgive me. It looks like Anna wants to come in with an idea.
If I'd just like an opportunity just to explain the context, because I often work quite hard. Where I see a scheme as beneficial and positive, I work quite hard with developers and applicants agents to get schemes to approval if I think there's merit. Unfortunately, with this one, we got to a point where we tried to negotiate to a certain point, but they wouldn't go any further. So these are the last two issues that we see as officers. which is why we brought it to committee, because of the tight timescales that the applicant's under. So yes, we would love to work further and try and sort out the ventilation, and unfortunately with the wall we don't feel there's anywhere we can go from a heritage point of view. So this kind of is the scheme that you've got to consider. I suppose there's some way we could go with the ventilation, but it's quite difficult on the basis of the information that we've been given. If it wasn't a listed building, we wouldn't be so nervous, but we need to know that there's a workable solution.
Hold on, I think Martin, the legal advisor, would like to come in.
Yes, just a suggestion before Councillor Shearer makes a proposal. Clearly, the height of the wall, you can take a view on whether the harm to the listed building by it being reduced is offset by the public benefits of the scheme. So that's within your gift to decide that. In terms of the ventilation system, it appears it's the lack of information around that that's the issue. So one way of dealing with it would be to delegate the approval of the planning permission and the listed building consent to officers, subject to the submission and approval of details of that ventilation scheme. Now that is pushing the issue down the line, but in light of the lack of information that your officers are saying they don't have at the moment, if members want to make a positive decision today, then I'd suggest that might be a way forward.
Thank you, Martin. I believe another officer would like to come in, Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a conservation officer and covering the East area. And I just thought I'd better say a little bit about the wall we're talking about. It keeps being referred to as just reduction of a wall. It is actually partial demolition of a wall, really. As you can see from the photographs up there, you know, we've got the oldest one up there, obviously with the Nissen huts in the background. You can see that the height of it isn't so much that it obscures terribly much, really. You know, the proposed museum is going to be significantly taller than those Nissen huts. And from the photograph, from the renderings we've seen, the proposed signage on, to say, Shoe Museum will be fairly high up. I can't see why a wall, retaining the wall of that height, would actually prevent people from knowing there's a shoe museum there and reduce the amount of visitors to it. I think looking at historic mapping, the wall is on tithe maps. That's the earliest far back we can go, without trying to find specialist maps from previously to that, which we haven't found. So that's, you know, at least sort of, you know, 1840, give or take. In order to allow it to go, the NPPF paragraph 200 does say that you have to have clear and convincing justification for harm. I can't see any clear and convincing justification for this. The whole scheme can operate. You know, I'm very, I dealt with the application, you know, at the early stages at pre-app, and I was very positive about it, having dealt with the site before on a couple of occasions. And this is something which I know the Alfred Gillett Trust have been working towards. So it's something that generally I have my wholehearted support. But we cannot just allow something which appears to be a small amount of harm to what's been referred to as an ancillary structure, just because the whole project will, you know, is going to be beneficial for street. I think that this in itself does need to have that justification. It doesn't have it. There's no public benefit associated with just partial demolition of this wall. So that was where I was coming from. I'll leave it with you to decide.
Okay, thank you, Jane. I believe Edric, you wish to speak.
Do you want to?
Or do you want to come back, Helen? Heather?
Sorry, if I may, I just wanted, first of all, I want to say I have the utmost respect for Jane, because we've worked together. I mean, admittedly, I was a step removed, but on the moving of our war memorial in Street, and that, yeah, and to actually think you had to go, and we had to get permission to demolish a listed, well, an ancient monument essentially, is terrifying. So absolutely respect where you're coming from, Jane, completely. A question I do have for this side of the table is, I suppose my intention is, but I was going to intend to listening to, subject to what Edric says, I was going to put out there a proposal that said going with the wall reduction to test how people in the room felt, because if they don't like it, then we can go away from it. But before I even thought of doing that, I want to check from here about what the risk might be, because never lightly would I go against a recommendation from an officer. I had a couple of years on planning before, a few years ago, and I don't do this lightly. There's reasons why you refuse something or approve something. So I just want to ask what risk there might be to the planning committee if we were to go against the officer recommendation in this case.
In terms of risk, if you are approving applications, I suppose there's two. One is that a party might try and judicially review those decisions for being unlawful. I think as long as the rationale for approval is set out and debated, then I think that is a fairly small risk in this case. The other risk is in terms of precedent for other cases, but in the case of a listed building, perhaps again that's less of a risk because each listed building is different. So, I mean, I can't say there is no risks in going against officer recommendation, but as long as the rationale for your decision is explained and set out, you can minimise and reduce that risk. Yeah, I'll leave it.
Right, thank you, Martin. Thank you, Heather. And now, Edric, you'd like to come in.
Thank you, Chair. I'm inclined to agree with Jane. I don't think we should overlook the significance of the wall. I'm really happy with the scheme, as is Anna, I think, but it's the extraction of the wall. I don't see leaving the wall where it stands is going to harm the benefit to street of having a museum. And with a 170, 180-year-old wall, I'd like to say, if we had a reasonably significant cottage, would you sort of propose knocking half it down and making it into a bungalow? I think we shouldn't overlook heritage, and just because it's a humble wall as against a building, then I don't think it should be discounted so lightly. I would go along with the officer's refusal, unless somebody wants to maybe put an amendment that where we go with it, but the wall and the extractor need to be maybe dealt with at a later date or by the divisional member. Is that possible? Thank you.
Yeah, Martin.
I don't think that's going to be possible, Chair, and the officer's recommendation is for refusal on the two elements that you provided. So I think it comes down to a hard decision between refusal or well, potentially deferral, but I understand that there are time constraints with this application, or an approval, some sort of approval. Those are your three options, basically.
Benty, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I heard right, but the wall is about 160, 1 meter 60. I'm 162 to be sort of very accurate, and most people can look above me. So I don't think this is the right measurement to use for knocking half a listed construction down. So I will vote with the officer that as a minimum the wall has got to be left in its entirety.
Thank you, Benty. Heather, did you want to come back in? Spotted you, Alex.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Alex, did you want to come in as well? I hate these. I get completely conflicted. I would like to put something forward just to see what people actually think around the table. But I split it into two. I think I would really like it to be a departure from the refusal, with the idea on the extraction that we approve, but with the idea that the extractor fan is done under the delegated arrangements that Martin mentioned. And the second part around the wall, my instinct is to take it as per the applicant's plan. That if I put that forward and somebody seconded it, if nobody seconds it, great, then it looks like the wall is the problem, and or wall is something people want to move from. But it gives us a way of fleshing it out. Because I have a feeling people are happy about the extractor in the delegation, and it comes down to our views about the wall. So if I put that out as a proposal to say, I propose that we go against the officer recommendation with the the delegated power around the extractor, but that we stay with the wall as per the thing. And see if that gets a seconder, we can vote on it, and then we can get to the bottom of what the committee thinks about the height of the wall collectively.
Okay, thank you, Heather. So that is a proposal. Is there anybody who wishes to second? Shane? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak before we go to votes? Alex, yeah.
Just a quick comment. There seems to be some sort of uncertainty or ambiguity about the history of the wall itself. Is there any further investigation that needs to be done on that as to what the importance of the wall was or the history of it? I appreciate it's already a listed wall itself, so it's got that category associated to it. But if this was refused, say, for preservation of the wall, is there any further, if there was a subsequent application, is there any further background you would like on the wall, for example, to ascertain its importance?
As I said before, I mean, every application for listed building consent, if there's any harm identified, which, you know, partial demolition reduction would be, then it needs to have clear and convincing justification. And I certainly don't feel that was provided in this case. So the answer really is yes, they should provide more if they wanted to pursue an application to partially demolish it. To justify why that harm is required and why it's justified, where the whole application could essentially go ahead if only they keep the wall. So it's, you know, but yeah, in answer to your question, yes, I mean, there is a clear sort of lack of information being put forward. I mean, the wall, you can see it on historic mapping, you can see it on, you know, going back to, you know, OS first, second editions and tithe mapping. So it does have some historic nature. I mean, on one of the historic mappings, I think it may be the second edition, no, first edition has, you know, you can see trees planted there. So I've formed a partially informed view that it may have been a sort of extension, a little extension to the orchard further over, because it was a wall which bounded some trees. But, you know, that's not 100% definitive without further research and information.
Okay, Barry, I can't see you for the sun.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You don't think I'm Helen Kay sat here, do you? It's a normal spot. I've heard what Jane has said about the conservation, and I think this conservation business is very important, because if we keep nibbling away, it's only a wall, we take a little bit of it away, take a little bit more of it away, we soon have no wall left at all. So when we identify things that are important from a conservation point of view, I believe we should keep them. Now, that having said, that's not going to put an end to this scheme. And it can't be beyond the wit of man to devise an exhaust system from the kitchen that is going to satisfy the planners and keep everybody happy and allow this project to go ahead, because it certainly is a worthwhile project. But conservation must do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barry. But we do have a proposal from Helen, seconded by Shane. Is there anybody else who wants to speak before we go to the votes?
Yeah, Chair, sorry, just quickly, I think to counter that, I'm going to, so we've got the counter proposal, as we'll need one after Helen's vote. I'm going to vote, I'd like a seconder to go along with officer recommendation refused. I'm looking for a seconder. So we've got it on the table to vote after. Councillor Height, I think, will second me on that. Thank you. Thank you, Benson.
Chair, if I can just clarify before you do go to the vote on Councillor Shearer's proposal. It is in relation to the planning application, which is the first on the agenda. And it's, and correct me if I get this wrong, Councillor, but it's to delegate to officers to approve the application, subject to the submission of details and approval of the extractor fan for the cafe, and on the basis that the changes to the wall are offset by the public benefits of the scheme. No.
Okay.
If I may, I'm getting a kind of move from around the table, and I don't want to be difficult. I would hate to bounce this proposal. So I'm wondering whether it might be prudent of me to actually change my my idea and go for the wall as it is, but with the delegated issue around the extractor. But I don't know whether I'd have a seconder for that. So it's the same thing as before. To say refusal, no, okay. I don't have it. Well, let's go to the vote then on the one as it stands. Thank you. And as you described.
Get this right.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, hang on, Martin. Yeah.
Not to throw. I've just been considering what Heather has just. It's Heather, by the way. I know you're missing Helen, but it's Heather, as we all are. I've given some consideration to that, and I do accept the officer's view on the wall. Having asked the question, I think it's a very good point. And following on from what Barry said, you know, I don't think we're worried about the vent. Can we give delegated permission for the officer to go back and negotiate the wall?
So just procedurally, firstly, there's a substantive motion that's been proposed and seconded that has not been withdrawn. So that has to be voted upon. If that's lost, then there's the opportunity. Well, there's then a proposal from the vice chair, which has been seconded by Councillor Height, to refuse the planning application in accordance with the officer recommendation. Just to answer your question directly, Councillor, I think what you would be proposing would be a deferral to allow officers to go away for further negotiation around the wall, having heard what the committee might say about it. But we've got to go through that voting process first before we get to that point.
Okay, so we are there now. So we're going to the vote. Now, I believe we have to vote twice.
Chair, the only application that's before you at the moment is the planning application. So we need to take a vote on Councillor Shearer's proposal. If that's carried, then we can move to the listed building. But if it's refused, then you then need to move to your vice chair's proposal for determination of the planning application. Okay, so
Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, sorry, it's Helen. Can we just be clear on exactly what Heather has proposed with regards to the wall for the minutes, because I wasn't entirely sure.
So with your permission.
Yes, yes, please.
It's to delegate to approve the planning application, subject to the submission of details of the extractor fan for the cafe, and on the basis that the harm caused by the reduction of the wall are offset by the public benefits of the scheme.
Okay, is everyone clear now? Great. Okay, let's move to the vote and get this one done and dusted. All those in favour of Councillor Shearer's proposal? 6, Chair. All those against?
2, 3, 5, Chair. So
and do we have any abstentions? No.
That's carried, Chair. So you can now move to the listed building application.
Okay. All those in favour? Oh yeah, I know we've got to go through that again. Yeah. Heather?
Yeah, forgive me if I get this incorrect, but I guess it would be a mirror image of what we've just said for the listed building elements. So it would be that I would be proposing that we delegate that approval for the extractor fan with the officers' involvement, and that the wall is so the wall is kept in place because the keeping of the wall is the benefit outweighs the less than significant harm as in the application or report.
Thank you. Who will be seconding? Shane, are you seconding? Thank you. Okay, now we can move to the vote. All those in favour?
6, 7, 8.
All those against?
1, 2, 3.
And any abstentions? No. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Members, are we ready to move to the next one? Are we missing anyone? No, we're all here. Okay, so we're moving on to the multi-user path in Shepton Mallet. So who is in charge of this one? Anna, I think, isn't it? Yeah, your turn.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, hello everyone. This application relates to the construction of a multi-user path along disused railway on the outskirts of Shepton Mallet.
Excuse me, can I just put in, can you put your mic in front of your computer?
Yeah.
So we can't quite hear you because you're quite quiet.
Sorry, am I like a little timid mouth? Is that any better? Yes. Perfect, right. So the section of path being proposed is 2.4 kilometres long. This plan is just showing where it goes from. So the path will go over Hamwood Viaduct, up here if you can see me wiggling around, through Windsor Hill Tunnel, across Forum Lane, over the Bath Road Viaduct, and to meet up with the A37. Construction of the path will help unlock land on either side and is a key part of the wider Somerset Circle project, which is just shown here on the right, which is a 76-mile circuit of mostly traffic-free path across the Greater Somerset area. It's a bit hard to tell on this map, but Shepton Mallet's just down here. So the development of the path will be split into 3 phases. So phase 1, shown in green here, is the Hamwood Viaduct to Bath Road Viaduct down here. And then we've got phase 2, the red, which is the eastern edge of Bath Road Viaduct to the A37. And then there is a phase 3 shown here in yellow, which is actually a future phase, and it's not part of this planning application. So for the avoidance of doubt, this application is looking at the kind of green and red section of the path. So I've just put a couple more detailed route maps, just showing the location of the path, basically from, this is from the Hamwood Viaduct down to Forum Lane. Parts of the path do follow existing public rights of way or run very close to existing ones, but essentially, yeah, it's following the line of the old railway path. That's just showing Forum Lane to Bath Road Viaduct. And then finally, we've got Bath Road Viaduct to the A37. I should point out at this stage that the revised plan of the access arrangements down near the A37 have been kind of altered during the planning application process. So the initial set of plans showed the path opening out onto the A37. However, I've got an overlay plan, which I've just popped in at the bottom, which basically show that the users of the path will use the existing right-of-way and vehicular access instead. And this is just to allow the applicant time to consider suitable crossing facilities over the A37, which they can do as part of a future phase 3 works, the bit that I showed in yellow earlier. So yeah, that can be required through conditions. So hopefully this has provided just a useful quick summary of the site and the proposed location of the path. For the reasons outlined in my report, I'm recommending that the application be approved subject to conditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anna. We have, speaking, a parish councillor, Councillor Jane Nicklin. Nicklin, is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of Shepton Mallet Town Development and Planning Council Committee, we really do support this one. I don't know if you can use that kind of superlatives, but we think that this is a real useful addition to the local community, and beyond that, it's going to encourage tourism. It's going to encourage the villages to link up with our town. We think it's very much a multi-user pathway, although we are concerned somewhat about some of the textures on that pathway. So we are fully behind this. We think it's going to be very useful. Already you see people going up and using those pathways, going through that area. And if you look at Facebook, the amount of positive comments about it is extraordinary. So I would say that our committee and Shepton Mallet in general is very much behind this development. And that is all I need to say, I think. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. And in plenty of time as well. Okay, we're going to go to members now, but I believe that Edric wishes to speak first.
It's going to come as no surprise to anybody who knows me that I wholeheartedly support this. I would like to speak that as this is a Greenways project and the Windsor Hill Tunnels people, I had nothing to do with this one because the ones I worked on with Kelly would have been the one around the campus. So I didn't declare an interest on this because I actually haven't got one. But I've been and visited the site many times and I'm excited about this as the rest of the members of the town council. And it will be a great addition of safe cycling and give an easier route for those who possibly aren't quite as fit as me to get onto the Mendips and up to the cafes on the hills. So I propose we accept this in line with the officer's recommendation, although I am actually able to hear other people speak, so they want to say something else.
Okay, do we have more comments? Yes, Claire. You're seconding Edric. Okay, and Benty, who is Shepton Mallet councillor.
Yes, I am not a Shepton Mallet town councillor. I am a Somerset councillor. I just want to say that on behalf of a lot of people, and I can speak on them, they are relieved that no bicycles are going to go across the cemetery. That has been a lot of people have been very frightened who's got their nearest line there, and they were told that their oak trees, etc., was going to be pulled up because now all of a sudden bicyclists were going to come across the cemetery. And I couldn't reassure them, but I'm glad you can do it now, that there is not going to be any peculiar traffic. And I'm sorry, but bicycles in a cemetery is not becoming. I am deeply concerned about Rosamond Green because Forum Lane is in question and the horses that are in Rosamond Green are very sensitive. So I am worried. In the past, young boys has been up on the Bath Road Viaduct and looked at women sunbathing down in below and thrown stone at oncoming vehicles. I just want to know that you can reassure me that that will never happen. And then I will abstain from voting in this matter here.
Okay, thank you, Benty. Would the officer like to reply to Benty? I don't think you can really, but you can try.
I can't really offer a reassurance that people aren't going to throw stones at naked sunbathers, or I don't know whether I added in the naked bit. Okay. But obviously I'd like to hope that obviously additional surveillance along the route and the fact that it's being used will hopefully perturb any kind of antisocial behaviour anyway.
Thank you, Anna. Well said. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to speak? Yes, Martin.
In that connection, Chair, it's quite interesting. I did have a comment from a member of the public about concern about this very matter of ballast being available to throw down, and I did refer the matter to Town Councillor Gavin Mayle, who's closely involved with this particular project. And I think I'm reasonable to say that Gavin gave a very good answer to that one, that there are planning heritage issues involved that all get thrown into that one. But hopefully the good practice will prevail in the end. I think that's fair to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And Barry.
It's called multimedia user track, and there's an awful lot of objections from horse riders and disabled people and various other groups who don't think it is a multimedia track. Now, having turned it into a bicycle track, I mean, what plans have we got to adapt it further to allow all these other people to use it? Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. I think somebody behind you would like to answer that question.
Probably worth noting in terms of the overall strategy around multi-user paths that some will just not be appropriate for horses to go on because of what we're actually doing. However, for the whole strategy, it is working with people representing the people who ride horses as well as all the others. So it is very much about trying to understand, for example, there are certain, actually Edric's probably better to answer this than me, but there are certain heights and things where horses are not comfortable to go in certain positions where, you know, a totally multi-user path would not work. But it is, the active travel people are working with all those groups to ensure access wherever that's possible for all groups.
Thank you, Judy. Edric, did you want to come back in?
It's covered it, thank you.
Judy's covered it for you, thank you. Are you happy, Barry? Yes, thank you. And Heather? No, Benty.
Thank you very much. I just want to add a thought, and that is if it is excluding users, then I hope that the money that is put into it has not been paid by people who do not agree with excluding other users.
Thank you for your comments,
Taxpayers'
Benty.
money we are talking.
No, thank you for your comments, Benty. Heather?
Thank you so much. I know these things are very complex, I realise, and lots of different people use them. Can I be assured that most people in, say, disabled or in kind of pushchairs, wheelchairs, things like that, pushchairs, I'm thinking, is that accessible through most of this or only parts of it? Through most?
Yeah, it's a consolidated footpath along most of the route, and I would add that it's been determined on the basis of the spirit. Everyone can use it, but obviously if users decide that maybe they don't want to use parts of it because they deem it to be unsafe by their own kind of admission, then that's up to them to make that a decision. You know, if they don't want to be crossing the busy road or doing certain sections of it, then but it's been determined on the spirit of access for all.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Are you happy with that, Heather? Great. Okay, so are we going to move to the vote now? Yep. Okay, so let's be straight to it. All those in favour of Edric's motion? Okay, and against? Yeah, and one abstention. Okay, thank you. Motion carried. Thank you. Right, next we're moving on to another Shepton Mallet one. This one is the land at Paul Street in Shepton Mallet for the change of use from land from agricultural to use as a Class E. And I mean, Carlton, this one is yours.
This is an application on land just off Paul Street in Shepton Mallet, or just off Charlton Road, I really think. It's an application for change of use of that land from an agricultural use falling within to a use falling within Class EF. And the use class order, that will be like a nursery school, that sort of use. And the erection of a nursery building, preschool, and associated access and parking there too. Right, this shows the application site outlined in red. It once belonged to 1 Charlton Road to the northwest there. You'll note it's quite an extensive site situated between that residential property and Whitstone School. If we go on to the next slide, please, Simon. Right, the left diagram shows the site as it is at the moment. Like I say, if you've been down to the site, you'll notice it's just generally open grassland, some pond at the bottom, and there's a TPO tree towards the roadside element, and you'll see that tree marked on the second slide on the right there. So this sets out an access way onto the site, which is previously given approval by the council when it approved a change of use of the property next door to a nursery school a couple of years ago. Then in this application, you've got a large parking area towards the front, and then halfway down the site, you'll notice a modular building. The site drops away significantly, so it's over 2 levels, but the bottom level was going to be just a storage and plant room in association. So most of the use is carried on on the what essentially is the ground floor, but when you access it from the bottom of the site, towards the back of the site will be an area where the children can play, the soft grassed area, and then there'll also be an area in between that L there, obviously for equipment and what have you, but it's, you know, a surfaced area. Can I move on to the next slide? Right, this is the plan showing the building. So you'll see the smaller area there is the basement and plant room storage, and the top floor. So you've got the main entrance coming in to various rooms, all associated with the use of the nursery. We move on to the elevations. Right at the top left is the elevation that will front Charlton Road. The one below that is the immediate rear elevation to that. You'll notice, obviously, the land drops away, and that creates that that basement area where the plant room can be, etc. So, and the other two are the side elevations. So you can see the level of the site dropping away, and the building take advantage of that in order to create that basement area. It's a modular building. And this is a general sketch of the building. You see the TPO tree there on the right-hand side, the car park in front of you, and the access and the building in the background. Just a flat roof modular building. So moving on to the next slide. That's a picture of the site at the moment, and you'll see the house in the background there is 1 Charlton Road, which previously gained planning permission as a nursery, but I believe it's since been sold off as a residential property again. Can we move on? Right, as you'll see in my report, the land has 2 very distinct designations, one being part of the Shepton Mallet Conservation Area, and another being an area, an open area of local significance. A lot of our towns all have these areas. Some villages have these areas as well. Obviously, they're designated for their importance of keeping certain elements of our towns and villages open, and therefore defining the character and important elements, views in and out, etc., of the area. So all those purple bits are all these open areas. The policy dictates that we shouldn't really be building in them unless there's a very overriding need to do so. Okay, so you'll see from my in my assessment of the development as a whole, it's within the development limits of Shepton Mallet. So there's a presumption in favour of developing, say, subject to obviously the site having these 2 strong designations. In respect of access to the site, that is completely acceptable. In terms of all other things like impact on the TPO tree, ecology, general highway safety, parking provision, etc., the application is acceptable. It is essentially these 2 designations, very important designations. Okay, and it's a very difficult decision, I know, but we have to consider that these are harms, and when they're weighed against the development as proposed, are they significantly outweighed by that proposed development? Is the need for that so much? Our conclusions are no at this moment in time, bearing in mind that we only recently gave permission for the site next door to become a nursery school. Obviously, the development of the site will be lost. Development of the site will result in that area being lost, that openness being lost forever. So a very difficult decision for all of you this afternoon to make. You've got to be weighing up that loss of open space and the impact on the character of the conservation area against the needs for the nursery. And I'll leave that up to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Carlton. Much appreciated. So we'll move on now to the public speakers. I'm just looking here to check. First, we have a Mr. Richard Thomas from the Neighbourhood Steering Group.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Richard Thomas, I chair the Shepton Mallet Town Council's Neighbourhood Planning Group, which is part of the Council's Looking Forward Group for Development. And I speak with the support of the Neighbourhood Planning Group. Can I just draw your attention to the wording in the application from the Council? The application has been referred to Planning Committee for reason of overwhelming support, including from the Town Council and the Ward Councillor. I'm not sure that that's entirely correct. At the time the Town Council considered this application, the neighbourhood plan was about to go to Regulation 14 consultation, and the land affected by this application was one of the important sites identified by the Council's steering group as one needing continuing protection. My understanding is that in considering the application, the Town Council didn't take the neighbourhood plan's views into consideration. Understandable, perhaps, because emerging neighbourhood plans sometimes don't quite match up with the Town Council, but regrettable because the MENDIP's view is that emerging local plans should be, and that includes emerging neighbourhood plans, should be one of the aspects to be considered, and unfortunately it wasn't. Town Council have corrected that and now do take things into consideration, I understand. It wouldn't be correct, therefore, to say that this application has the overwhelming support of the Town Council. The neighbourhood plan team unanimously oppose this particular application. The current position of the neighbourhood plan team relating to the site needs to be clarified. At Regulation 14, it was clearly identified by the steering group as a site deserving protection. We believed, and we still believe, that it meets the criteria of tranquility, as it provides an area of green space in an otherwise heavily developed area. It also meets the criteria of historic significance in that it's closely associated with one of the oldest prisons in the country, and it still has the prison's crypt within its environs. And there's a strong argument that it also meets the criteria for richness of wildlife, given the stream that flows through it and wetland area that sustains aquatic wildlife. We have reviewed the proposals for preservation after Regulation 14, and when we go to Regulation 16, we will still propose that this be protected as DP2 status as an open area of local significance, where permission will not be granted for development which would harm the contribution to distinctive local character made by open areas of local significance as identified by the policies. That's as far as land protection is concerned, and that is important. But our objection goes beyond that.
I hate to say you are getting close to the
I
end.
will
If you wind
try and
up,
hurry.
please.
It's simply in the wrong place. We have the CG Fry development coming up, which has identified an open area of green space specifically for this kind of development. If you say yes to this and put it right in the centre of the town, with buggies travelling through those narrow traffic streets, it becomes almost inevitable that it will simply increase car use and make difficult. If these great people, if these great people could look
Time
at
is up.
this, is it?
Yes.
The CG Fry development will suit them much better. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, now we go to supporters, and I'm going to read out a statement from Sarah Love, who is the Service Manager for Education and Childcare at Somerset Council. Okay, so here we go. As Service Manager for the Education and Childcare Places team at Somerset Council, I wish to give my utmost support for this agenda item. Due to the significant and vital contribution that Willow Nursery and Preschool make regarding childcare places in Shepton Mallet, Willow are currently operating on land owned by Whitstone School, which Somerset Council have no authority over due to Whitstone being the owners of all of their land and buildings within it. A structural survey commissioned by Willow in July 23rd shows that there are approximately 18 months of usable life left in their current early years accommodation before it will be condemned. There is no location for them to decamp to whilst rebuild takes place, as well as no mechanism to renegotiate accommodation or alternative land with the school, who served them notice to vacate their current premises in 2018. As a local authority, we are bound by the 2006 Childcare Act, which details our statutory duty to provide sufficient numbers of childcare places for families. Members from my team and I have had regular visits and meetings with the team at Willow due to the vital importance that their ability to provide a long-term childcare provision has on our ability to meet statutory duty for families in Shepton Mallet. Comparing the town's current year's population with the number of childcare places currently offered, we can see that the town already does not have enough places to meet the demand for 0 to 1 year olds. If Willow is no longer able to operate, we see an even greater shortfall of 0 to 1 year old places, with our figures calculated at 35 families requiring childcare for this age being unable to secure a place in the town. Our data also suggests that we would be insufficient in the number of 3 and 4 year old places offered compared to demand. We know this will have a huge knock-on effect for the school readiness of these children, and any shortfalls of availability will greatly impact the ability of working parents to secure and retain employment or to undertake any training as a precursor to finding employment. Furthermore, with this year's spring budget announcements, the Department for Education predicts that by September the 24th, additional 129 places over the current number available will be required for 0 to 4 year olds in the Shepton Mallet area. This planning application has the ability to increase the number of places it currently offers, which would go some way towards meeting the increased demand without Willow operating. Without Willow operating, we would easily be in the realms of needing over 150 additional places in Shepton Mallet. For all of the reasons I have detailed from the childcare sufficiency perspective alone, it is vital that Willow has their planning bid approved and they are able to promptly begin to build a process for the benefit of current and future children and families within the town. Thank you. That's the end of the statement. Thank you. Next person to speak will be Laura Palmer, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm the parent of a child that's currently at Willow. UNICEF has stated that every child's early movements matter. So children's brains are built moment by moment as they interact with their environments. Children develop the most during their first 5 years of life. More than 1 million neural connections are formed each second, a pace that's never repeated again. The quality of a child's early experiences make a critical difference as their brains develop, providing either strong or weak foundations for learning, health and behaviour throughout life. Willow Nursery and Preschool is a charity and it's a not-for-profit business. The staff are dedicated in one goal, which is to always strive to build a sound foundation for children to grow and learn. Sadly, the current buildings are deteriorating rapidly, presenting daily challenges and preventing them from reaching their full potential. If you think it's hot in here today, think of the children and staff at Willow in porta cabins. Since 1964, there has been early years provision on the current site. Moving sites was never a path Willow would have chosen, but unfortunately they were served notice to leave with no option of redevelopment using the land they're currently situated on. The children, the families, the staff and our community deserve better. Time is running out for the buildings, and a new location that is central to our community allows them, the staff at Willow, the families, to access important elements of the amazing town of Shepton Mallet. I know the previous speaker mentioned pushing pushchairs and driving cars, that there is no difference in the current site location and the new one in my mind. High quality provision is not only essential for children, but their families. A number of frontline services have been lost in recent years. These services provide guidance and support for the most vulnerable families. The closure of these services has placed more responsibility on Willow as early years practitioners. I urge you to consider the importance of high quality early years provision, both now and for generations to come. As we're all aware, the government is committed to providing more funded places for our youngest children starting in April 2024, with the full scheme being implemented by September 2025. Ultimately, if they do not achieve this new build, they'll be forced to close their doors, meaning a high number of children will not be able to access high quality early years care and education, which will have a huge impact on the local economy as parents will have to choose between their professions and caring for their children. Willow are passionate about early years education. I recognise and accept the concerns that have been raised regarding the proposed development, and I understand that the development will have an impact on an area of green space. But Willow have worked very closely with their architectural consultant and ecologist to implement mitigations. A key element of the Willow ethos is supporting children and experiencing the awe and wonder of the natural world. I strongly believe that the public
If you could wind up, please, now.
Absolutely. I strongly believe that the public benefit hugely outweighs the harm, and to conclude in the words of the Princess of Wales, all of society has a role to play in this, even if you are not directly involved in a child's life, because we were all responsible for building a more compassionate world in which our children can grow, learn and live. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next speaker is Harriet Crees, please.
Hi, thank you for letting me the opportunity to speak. I'm a parent at Willow. Willow Nursery is an asset to Shepton Mallet. The staff are incredible. They go above and beyond to support children in their development, providing a nurturing and safe environment. If this build is not to go ahead and the nursery foresees a closure, staff will be losing their jobs in an already difficult time. My children are extremely supported and nurtured in their development. They have grown with confidence and are always acquiring new skills from their peers and increasing their socialisation. I proposed in my supporting statement for all on the committee to think outside the box and work together to provide a space to help protect the wildlife and maintenance of the land. I'm disappointed to learn that this is still a barrier. Our children are the future of the community and society. Their brains are like sponges and learn at such a fast pace. We could have the next major scientist or vet or archaeologist within this setting. So why can we not create a space that celebrates the wildlife that they are growing and playing in? Designated areas for these species to grow and educate the children. For example, I'm teaching my child to use a dock leaf when stung and picking blackberries on our local walks. This type of learning can be embedded into the nursery. I'd like to share with you the reality of what it's currently like for a full-time parent. Since returning from mat leave with my second in May 2022, childcare has been an ongoing stress and worry. I first inquired about a space at Willow for my youngest on the 15th of January. She had to wait 4 months until she could start, and my eldest had to wait 5 months. I requested to change a session time to an all-day on the 5th of May, and I've had to wait 15 months. This is because the capacity of numbers for Willow are currently between 50 to 70, depending on the sessions the children attend and because of their limited spaces. Secondly, I work full-time, not only because I love my job, but because it's a necessity. My wages alone provide the meals for my family to eat. If this planning application is not approved, then there's a real concern for not only me, but other parents at Willow. I know for a fact that we are not entitled to any universal credit benefits or income support. So if I cannot work due to planning being denied, these on the committee board will be forcing me below the poverty line and struggling to support my family in an already stretched living crisis. And I'll be coming to the committee board to find childcare for both my children with immediate effect with no waiting list. Lastly, many parents who have children at Willow are working parents, providing vital support to the local community. So when there is no longer a children's entertainment parties, or the pet shop has to close early, or there are long waiting times to see a GP or access mental health support, I will not be afraid to inform the local community that the reason for this is because parents have been forced out of work because of the planning committee.
Thank you very much. And we now move on to Councillor Jane Nicklin again. Your second bite of the cherry today.
Thank you, Chair. We're very cognizant of the issues around the green space, the open area. We're aware of that, but we also have to balance that with the good for the town. We're aware we haven't got enough nursery places, particularly 0 to 2, and they're difficult ones for people to manage. They don't get the funding they need for that. So we're very aware that we have a real issue in this town. Now, the City Fry development may not happen for another 2 years. 2024 is when they're saying they're going to start it. We have the phosphate issues, etc. It would be great if we had both, because let's face it, 660 new houses in our area is going to produce a whole pile of new families who will need these facilities. So it's not that we think it's either or, we need to have both. And I think that our committee as a whole thought that the balance between what is a well-designed unit, it's been made to look low level, it's down a slope, it will take account of what's around it in terms of environment, as long as we don't get lots of runoff to make sure that we flood the areas below it. I think that we felt that on balance, this was the right way to go. And as a committee, this is what we are delegated to do from the town council, and we agreed it. So we didn't take into account necessarily the neighbourhood plan, because at that stage it wasn't fully able to be taken account of, but we were cognizant of what it said. I would like to support this, and my committee would like to support this. And I'd like to point out that we now cover economic regeneration on our committee, and this links directly to economic regeneration, as the last speaker said. So that is where we are as a place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. And the last speaker will be Liz Payne.
Can I start my time again? Thank you. Good afternoon. We're all aware that planning seeks to balance the sometimes divergent needs and demands of the environment, society and economy. And this is acknowledged by the policy and conservation officers in their comments. Both emphasise that this balance must be carefully considered, but significantly, neither has recommended refusal. The Conservation Office says creating the entrance and car parking area of 4th Street on the highest part of the site significantly dilutes the positive open space. But as already mentioned, parking and access in this position was granted in an earlier application, to which Conservation made no comments or objections. The parking's increased by 5 spaces and room for the required emergency and utility provision. The TPO tree is unaffected. The Planning Policy Officer draws attention to the requirements of the Childcare Act, and her report states that careful consideration should be given to the balance between the harm caused by loss of part of the open area of local significance and the benefits of the continued provision of childcare. Other speakers today have set out the position that Willow are in, the need they fulfil and their importance to the well-being of the town. We acknowledge that there will be an impact on the open space and the conservation area, but every effort has been made to minimise this impact through the siting of the building and the landscaping. A drawing showing the site sections would have illustrated this well, but wasn't shown today. The site is perfect for Willow's forest school ethos, with the forest and stream, with the trees and stream as teaching aids. We must make it absolutely clear that if this application fails, it will mean the closure of Willow Nursery, who are currently operating in buildings not fit for purpose and under notice to leave. Unfortunately, the case officer does not appear to take into account the situation. and states that the current nursery is still operating and meeting existing demand, and therefore at present the proposal would provide little public benefit. But this is extreme short-termism and pays no regard to the future of childcare in the town. This little public benefit is what he weighs against the impact on the conservation area. The case officer also referred to the modest economic benefits of the proposal. And we've just heard from one parent who has discussed the economics of the matter. Closure of Willow will result in a loss of jobs at the nursery and make finding high quality childcare very difficult for working parents in Shepton and the surrounding area. The essential economic need for childcare is recognised by central government, as is the importance of early years learning to achieve a skilled population. We have all worked hard to achieve an acceptable planning
Okay,
balance.
Liz, you'll have to hurry up and wind up,
We
please.
trust that the committee will support this not-for-profit charity, which provides such excellent childcare now, and we hope for the foreseeable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, now we will move on to, excuse me, get the frog out of my throat. We'll move on to members' questions. I think maybe we've got the two, we're lucky, we've got both the Shepton Mallet Somerset councillors on our panel. So Martin, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I was going to reserve my right to, not necessary, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, I'd certainly, I mean, the demand for, I mean, if that's a swaying matter, the demand for nursery spaces in the town is paramount. I don't think anybody would question that. So, but I'll leave my views on this particular application to, I'll deal with that in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Benty, your turn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I fully understand the severity of bringing up little children in Shepton Mallet. There is really need for something in town where so parents can just walk out. And I'm afraid that I do not get offended by prams and other things and other equipments of getting children around. It doesn't bother me at all. Children are the future of our society. There is, however, one thing. When it was number 1 Charlton Road, that I backed up fully. Yes, it was because the house was there and it wouldn't infringe on the wildlife. But there is badger sets, there are deers visiting, there are these little, what are they called, hedgehogs. There are so many foxes, there are so many different kinds of wildlife. It should never be that they took over for human beings. But in this case here, where we are squeezing animals left, right, and centre as well, I am split between two. My heart bleeds for the nursery school because really, really, truly, Shepton Mallet needs it. So at the moment, I am split. So I'm sorry. That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you, Benty. Heather. And then Martin.
Yep, thank you very much. And I just want to start by saying I don't believe there's an officer in this room that would really want to close a school down, or a nursery school down. I'm sure there isn't one. And I'm sure, as I think Carlton said when he introduced the thing, that this is a really difficult, the reason we get these pieces come to us, these applications come to us, is because they're hard. Because we have conflicting rules within which we have to work. So I just want to say, first off, my heart goes out for the officers just as much as it goes out for those people who are directly affected and indirectly affected by this decision. So I want to say that first off. Having said that, I have to say, I'm being really stroppy. You're going to not want me to go and be a sub anymore, because I have to say, I would view this that the need for those childcare positions would trump, I have to say, the conservation questions. In my view, that's my view, and it's not everybody else's. That's why we have a whole panel. It's like a it's like a jury. But to my mind, that need for early years provision for both the existing operation that's there, which I've no doubt is doing a good job. The fact that finding an alternative is really difficult. They're under notice. the impact that would have on the children's learning and on the families and there on the economic development, I would always stack that more highly or rate that more highly than the conservation area. But that's where I'm coming from myself. So I just want to put that out there. That's my view on it. If there has to be a balance, I would come down on that side. And I've been unpopular in this room before by coming down on the side of, say, social housing as opposed to green space. And I always will. That's kind of a consistent thing that I have, because I think homes and I think care and I think childcare, to my mind, there has to be a blooming good reason why that would not trump green space in itself. So that's just where I'm coming from on that.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Next one is Martin.
Yeah, there's always a compromise between green spaces and development. And one of the paradoxes that we have to deal with is that we're encouraged to look at infill, urban infill, which in some respects this might be considered, and not building out of town and on external green spaces. So it's always a problem there. I don't think anybody, as Heather says, I don't think anybody doubts the need for this. I'd just like to ask a few questions, actually. I've heard that the building is due to be modular. Can I ask 3 questions of Officer? Has it got adequate insulation? Is it generally sustainable? Does it have air source heating?
I couldn't give you an answer to any of those, I'm afraid. It's a modular building, so, you know, it's makeshift, isn't it? It's not, they're not designed to be permanent there forever.
Mr. Chairman, I'm seeing some nods and waves from the perhaps there's somebody in the room that can answer that question.
I believe Liz, or no, you is it Samantha? Yeah, you can answer it. You're not supposed to come back in. No, that's true. No, I can't let you back in then. Really, I'll stick to the rules. Sorry. Yeah, Simon.
As your officers have, we've had to determine the application on the basis of the information that's been submitted. And in answer to Councillor Demery's questions, obviously couldn't provide an answer, and that is a fair reflection of the information that they have provided us with. So they've told us that they will be replaced with 2 Elliott buildings. No, sorry, the current Whitstone Academy is in 2 Elliott buildings. In terms of the proposed buildings, I haven't provided any of those sustainability principles that Councillor Demery has asked for. Again, it might be that information's out there, but it hasn't been submitted with the application.
Mr. Chairman, may I go and speak to somebody quietly outside about this, find out for myself?
That would be your own prerogative.
Does that mean I can't vote on it?
You wouldn't be able to vote on it, though.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Heather, back to you.
Yeah, forgive me for having two bites of this kind of cherry. And I will actually, I'm going to declare an interest in as much as I am a director of a modular storage building business. But that's nothing to do with this because we do nothing to do with schools. So I just wanted to declare that in case anyone thought I was being funny. I think the question that you asked, Martin, is really good. And it's one I wish I had asked myself in terms of the longevity of buildings planned and this sort of stuff. Because I know there are modular buildings and modular buildings. There are plenty of modular building schemes out there that do really well and that are, have long-term applications. And, I did wince just a tad with one of the phrases, but so, some of them aren't very good. Some of them are very good. And they're often used in all kinds of publicly funded applications, and some of them and some of them bad. At the moment, with what's going on in the news, with all the stuff about schools and the state of schools and all kinds of bits of, I would, if I were to at some stage put forward, or someone put forward a proposal to say they wanted to go ahead with this, then I would want all kinds of conditions on it around understanding the longevity and the quality and the fabric of the building and the rest of it. But I just want to say that from my view of modular buildings, they can have long-term and sustainable applications quite happily. And we all know some things that are built as permanent have to be ripped down subsequently. So it's not always a given that modular's bad and permanent's good.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Shane?
I won't repeat the sort of the conundrums that have already been mentioned about conservation versus need for childcare. But I do think it's extraordinary in this day and age that this is a school that's going to be used in the daytime only, that it hasn't come to us with solar panels, doesn't even need batteries because it's only daytime use. I think it's appalling that, 2023, these things are not specified in advance. You're going to be faced with huge electricity bills if you're not providing your own electricity, which is just storing up problems down the road. I'm still prepared to vote in favour of this, but with a real firm, we've got to take climate seriously, and you've got to take your energy bill seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Benty? I'm just going to ask, did you move? You left the room, did you? Unfortunately, you won't be able to vote now. Okay, thank you. Who's next? Martin.
And the answer has been passed on to me, which is that Somerset, I believe, has insisted on for most of those buildings, most of those requirements that I asked for. It's worth noting that Somerset built quite recently a nursery in Passive House style, if it wasn't Passive House, which fulfills all of those criteria. And as a rule of thumb, I'd really like us to have asked these questions because, as Shane said, this is a consideration. We're talking about the children of the future. They've got to grow up in a future which environmentally is very fragile indeed. And we want to encourage them to grow up and learn and live in buildings that are suitable.
Thank you, Martin. Right, Edric, yeah, you are next.
I'd like to ask Carlton. I mean, apart from Simon's just asked me to, we need to debate, will the harm, I'll say that in English, the contribution, distinct local character of the open space, as in, is the open space important on a policy map? I want to ask how much of the open space is being left behind the building. Could you clarify that down towards the pond area before I make up my mind? And secondly, I'd like to ask, one of the things I like to go about on developments, particularly where maybe we've got a bit more control than massive developments, will there be a permeable car park? Is one of the things I'm big on in relation to runoff. I'm aware this is on the side of the Sheppey Valley and it not too far down the hill in town, not town square, in Leg Square, we get lots of, we do get quite a few flooding issues. So I'd like to satisfy myself there at some point. If not, could we condition the car parking is permeable to aid runoff? Or is that not going to help runoff because this is going to sink into the ground and still run into Leg Square? So I'd like some answers there, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if the decision was overturned, there would be a whole raft of conditions, as highlighted by the ecologist, etc. And one of those conditions would be for sustainable drainage, surface water drainage system, especially with regard to the car park. And also you need to integrate things like traps in terms of oil not going into that sort of thing. So all that could be covered quite successfully through a condition, if we so wish.
Right, great. Thank you, Carlton. Thank you, Edric. Alex.
Yeah, I think one of the main important things with this, I think what Martin and Shane has said is the sustainability of the building itself, because this clearly a contentious issue as to putting this on a green space. The last thing you want is for this building to be not usable within the space of a couple of years, having filled that space. But also, what a wonderful spot I think it is for kids to learn, with that area out the back, with the pond, with the wildlife that is out there at the minute, and provided that the conditions imposed protect that to a certain to an acceptable degree, I think it'd be a fantastic place for children to grow up. And my final point, I think, is on the society that we want to be in, and the benefit that comes of parents, mothers, fathers of being able to put their children in care, and you know, being able to work and things like this. So I think this probably has a material benefit that, from what I can see, that will be positive and a positive development. So.
Okay, thank you, Alex. I think Martin wishes to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Just some hopefully brief comments to assist. In any planning application, you're required to determine those applications in accordance with your policies in the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So it's the planning balance. Now, 2 reasons for refusal recommended by Carlton. The first relates to DP2, relating to open areas of local significance, which says, and it's quite firm, permission will not be granted for development which would harm the contribution to the distinctive local character made by that open area. So one question is, do you feel that the development harms that open space or not? The second reason for refusal relates to the impact on the conservation area. There's a statutory requirement to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character of the conservation area. Again, the question, does the development harm the conservation area? Now, you might decide that in both those answers that yes, it does harm those interests. And then the next question is, is there anything that outweighs those harms? So that's the balance that you need to come to. I would say if you feel that it does harm the open area, then it's clearly contrary to policy DP2, but there may be counterbalancing arguments that you feel outweigh that harm, same with the conservation area. Just on conditions, yes, if members are minded to approve, those can be delegated to officers in consultation with the chair and vice chair.
Thank you, Martin. I think that was informative. The next speaker will be Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I walked down and had a look at this piece of land the other day, having looked at the drawings that came with the application, half of this piece of land could not be surveyed. It is so overgrown with brambles and just general rubbish. It makes you wonder why you want to keep this as something that's valuable to the community. Now, if this application doesn't go through, I hope that Shepton Town Council will do something about this and tidy this up so it does become a real asset to the community. Notwithstanding that, I think it's such a difficult decision. I see the word conservation, and in this instance, I'm going to defer to the planning officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. That was an interesting comment. Claire.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to acknowledge the local people, families, voices we've heard who've taken time from work to represent and fight for the nursery. Just feel that this is not the time, the difficulties that many families are going through to make things difficult for working people, working families, the local economy. And I think we have to put the children first, and we shouldn't be kicking anybody in the teeth by denying the amenity that Shepton needs. And for me, I think this is a simple decision.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Edric, you wish to wind up there?
Wind anybody up. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, Claire, those aren't material considerations in relation to whether people need a planning spaces or not. We are determining whether it fits in a policy, and this clearly contravenes, was it DPO2, in relation to affecting an open space. But we need to debate, and as we feel we already have, does the harm to that space, is it outweigh? Does the benefit of providing the nursery outweigh the harms to the space? I actually think the benefit does outweigh the harms of that space, because I've walked past this scruffy piece of land for the many years I've lived in Shepton, and I don't think developing it with the nursery is a bad thing. We're leaving some of it So I am prepared to vote. If you want to propose it, I am actually prepared to second you. But we need to remember it is on planning terms, not just on the heartfelt pleas of the people. Sorry if I mentioned you, if you want to come back as I mentioned it, but if you want to propose it, I'm happy to second to go against officer recommendation based on, I think, the benefit does indeed outweigh the harm caused to the land.
Thank you. I do acknowledge that the officers are the experts here. But my understanding of DP2 is there's an economic element embedded in there. And that's what I'm seeing as linking to the harms. So yeah, I would like to propose we approve. Thank you.
And I'm happy to second his departure.
Okay, Martin, you'd like to come back in quickly?
Yes, just in relation to that proposal. Not to disagree with the Vice Chair, but I do think lack of spaces is a material consideration for you. But in terms of the proposal, as I understand it, councillors, that you acknowledge the harms to those two interests we talked about earlier, and therefore this would be a departure application from your plan. So we would need to advertise that first before we issue the permission. Doesn't mean it needs to come back unless there are any new issues that arise in that. But because it's a departure, we need to go through that process. But you feel that the benefits of the scheme in terms of providing spaces outweigh those particular harms, which is a judgment for you, for the committee. As I said earlier, if you're minded to approve, can officers have delegated authority to impose conditions, including the ones that have been discussed in consultation with your chair and vice chair? Have I missed anything, Mr. Trafford? No? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we go to the vote. Oh, Martin,
so that's clear then that in supporting this, I support this, but on the assumption that conditions will be applied. Thank you.
Okay, Shane.
Sorry, I'm unclear what conditions. I mean, I would be interested in conditions of solar panels so that it's energy independent. Is that a relevant condition?
Simon, yeah.
Yeah, your policy, DP7 would normally require that we request that type of information to be submitted with planning application or to give us the ability to condition it on any positive recommendation. I think probably the best way, because as Carlton said, there's probably quite a few conditions that he will need to consider drafting to then put to the chair and the vice chair for consideration and approval, and possibly you might need to seek support from some of the board if some of the board are minded to think that.
Okay, thank you, Simon. Does that answer your question?
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
So, are we all happy to go to the vote? Yep. Okay, we know. Would somebody like to read out the proposal first, please? That would be a good idea.
With the proposal and seconders approval, yeah. Contrary to officer recommendation, to approve the application as a departure from the development plan on the basis that the benefits of the scheme, in particular the additional places for early learning, outweigh the harms to the open area and the conservation area, and that delegated authority be granted to officers to impose conditions in consultation with your chair and vice chair.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin. So I think everybody understands. Okay, let's go straight to it. All those in favour? 8.
Sorry, beg your pardon. Show again.
Show again.
1, 2,
9. Any against?
2.
And any abstentions? Right. Okay, that's that one. That one is passed. Thank you. And I think we'll take a 10-minute break now for comfort. Right. Good. Good afternoon and welcome back again for our next instalment of the planning board today. So next we're going to move on to planning application for the, at Tad Hill Farm Cottage, and that's in Lyon Mendip, or just outside if all of you have been to have a look. So Carlton, would you like to fire away?
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application at Tad Hill Farm Cottages on the Old Wells Road. It's one of the main roads leading past Lyon Mendip. So it's an alteration to the existing access arrangements and the installation of a new access track down the side of the cottages, which results in the extension of the residential curtilage. In summary, the application's only been brought before you as members on the basis that because of the extension to the residential curtilage outside development limits, it's essentially a departure. So in normal circumstances, if there was no objections as is with this application, this would have just gone through on the nod, but I'm having to present it, as most all departures have to be presented to the planning board. All right, so this is the application site. So we've got a large selection of farm buildings here, and we've got the main farmhouse and there's a little cottage next door. Currently, there's one access arrangement here, which is accesses to the farm and also is the parking there for the cottage at the end there. There's an array for the farmhouse, I mean. There's an existing access and parking area here which serves a little tiny cottage. I'll just move on. It's better, you can see it better here. So this is the main farmhouse and this is where the parking. So the whole key reason for the application is to avoid this conflict between the working farm and the farmhouse, and they would just like to have some parking elsewhere accessed off a track. So they'll come up, the existing access will be widened here, and then they'll come down the side of the property, taking up some of the small parts of the land and the small parts of this field here, and they'll create some, there we go, create some parking area here to serve the house. So there'll be a domestic arrangement here for these two cottages, and then there'll be the main business access for the main farm. There's an aerial photograph showing the farm buildings, etc., give you a little bit of a better feel. Right. So that's the two cottages. So this is the main farmhouse. This is in, and there's the cottage on the side. All looks like one property, but it's actually two. So this is the existing access arrangements to the farm. So it's quite restricted, and there's a bit of conflict occasionally. So this is the existing parking area to the side of the cottage, and there's already a field access through here, which is used by the farm to gain access to the field. So that will remain, but obviously that will be better surfaced, and it'll create an access round to the back. Right, so in terms of highway safety, the access arrangements will actually be an improvement, gaining additional visibility display. So there's no issue in terms of highway safety. The cottages are listed. So in terms of the arrangements of just creating a track that has very little impact on the setting of those listed buildings. And I appreciate that there will be a loss of a small parcel of agricultural land associated with the development, but it has been kept to the very minimum in order to provide it. So we consider it to be an acceptable scheme and has been recommended for approval, subject to the conditions that are imposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlton. I believe Mr. Davis, the applicant, wishes to have a couple of minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't need a couple of minutes. It's getting so hot in here. I think you'll be all glad if we can do it as quickly as possible. This application aims to create a safe entrance to the Tad Hill farmhouse by separating the farm and the house access. There's a family of young children living there, and this would improve the safety both for them and for the farm traffic. Although it would mean a small change of use for this small area of land, the new planting of the hedge, trees will improve biodiversity and the appearance of the area. There's been no objections, and the Parish Council have recommended approval. So I very much hope that you will feel able to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Mr. Davis. Thank you. Okay, there are no more. I'm just double checking. No, there are nobody else who wishes to speak. Who would like to speak first in the here? Right, Heather first.
I was only going to put it out there that if I was going to put a proposal forward that we accept it in line with the officer recommendation, but of course you can still discuss until somebody seconds.
I was going to do the same thing, so I'm happy to second.
You were going to do the same thing. Barry? It's all been covered. Okay, so if we're gonna do this, then Heather, you were proposing that we go along with officer recommendation. And who did Alex, you're seconding? Okay, thank you. Can we anybody wish to speak before we go to the vote? Phil, you'd need to say something? No, you can see the general consensus. Okay, thank you. Okay, then let's go for the vote. All in favour? Unanimous. Unanimous. It's unanimous, so it's passed. Thank you, Mr. Davis. You can go home. Happy now. Yes. Okay, the next one is land at Tynings Hill, Falkland, and that's in Somerset, obviously. I'm just checking to see who the officer is, and it's Jennifer. What I can see here. So, Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this is land at, say, the A366, Tyning Hill to Falkland. The application is for outline planning permission for 5 residential dwellings with details of access, that all other matters are reserved. So this is the site highlighted in red. It's a triangular section of land to the southwest of the main village of Falkland. So a closer view of the land. As you see, it's on the corner of the A366 and a lane known as Greenway. There are residential properties to the south, and that area of land to the west, I believe, is kind of a gravel depot for highways. Okay, and again, so this is the location plan. As you can see, it's the southwest of the village. It's also, I didn't actually show the development limits of Falkland, but the development limits run directly along the southeast boundary of the site itself. So it's just outside development limits, but it's adjacent to them. An existing site plan. There is an existing water station on the site, which is kept just outside of the red line of the development site. The junction with Greenway to the A366 to the northeast of the site is, so just up here, is proposed to be improved as part of this application. They're proposing to move this hedgerow back a few feet in order to improve the visibility when coming out of that junction onto the A366. And this is an illustrative proposed site plan. Obviously, this isn't outlined, so it's subject to change, but this is roughly the idea of what they're going for. Each property will have an individual access onto the lane to the south. Yeah, there's 5 dwellings there, I think semi-detached and detached, but like I say, this is only illustrative at this stage. So this is a street scene view, mainly just showing what they're proposing in place of the hedgerow, because they're going to have to remove the hedgerow to create the accesses. They're proposing these green bridges to branch across the top of the accesses so that foraging bats can still have a continuous run of foraging. And a section on the site, the property on the left is the proposed dwellings, and the ones on the right are existing. So you see they're slightly lower in the landscape than the existing properties. And this just shows the betterment of the existing access of the main road. The bottom plan shows where they're proposing to move the hedgerow back to improve visibility. And again, this is just providing evidence that the visibility space with individual accesses can be achieved. Okay, so photos of the site. It's currently just grassland. And the photo on the right is the existing field access onto Greenway. So the one on the left is it'd be looking west, and the one on the right is looking east, and the existing properties to the side. This is the area of land adjacent to the site to the west. And the recommendation is for approval with conditions as set out in the officer reports. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm just double checking to see if there are any speakers, and there are none. So we go straight to the committee, or the ward councillors, please, first, if we got them on board. That'd be Barry, I think, wouldn't it? And Phil. We'll have a chat with you in a minute, Phil. Barry, you can go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The parish council, they recommend refusal, and they know far more about the area than most of us do. They live there all day, every day, and they've got various grounds for objecting to it, not the least of which, in my opinion, is the intrusion into the people next on the other side of the lane. This just looks like a purely speculative dumping of 5 houses on a piece of ground because they can do it. There's no particular merit attached to any of these houses. I think they're 5 4-bedroom houses that they're proposing.
It is currently outlined, so it's subject to change.
Okay, be that as it may.
3 4-bedroom detached dwellings and 2 3-bed.
Okay. I think if they were smaller cottage type buildings, more in keeping with the village, it would be better. But as it stands, I would object to this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Phil, I said I'd let you in to speak. Carry on.
I think this is where the new system falls down, because Barry covers Falkland. I don't. I've not seen this until a couple of days ago. And I can't see in the report where it says the parish council disagreed with it, but perhaps I'm missing that. I'd like to know who the landowner is of this land, because in my previous time here at Mendip, that land belonged to Somerset County Council, and we were thinking of putting a gypsy and traveller site on it. So whether the county has sold the land or whether somebody's trying to get permission on the land and then buying it from the county, I'm not sure. The biggest problem I see is the houses behind the other side of the road are elevated, and they will be looking down, right down into this site. That's just my comments.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, we'll come back into the committee now. And who would like to start the debate? No one? Heather.
I can always be relied upon to speak. May not always make sense, but always it can be. Just for clarification then, so just I've got this one right, so forgive me because I came in quite late. So this is a sub. So this one is a piece of land that's outside of the development area. So it's a departure from our plan to say yes to it. It's outlined at this point. So if it's outlined what elements, it's only presumably talking about access, presumably. Forgive me, I missed that bit because I was eating my chocolate.
Yeah, at this point, it's seeking permission for outline permission for 5 dwellings with details of access only. All other matters are reserved.
If I may just come back with the second part of that.
You certainly can.
Thank you, and then I'll shut up and listen to other people. I've not seen it anywhere in a room like this, but I did think that individual accesses onto roads was something we wouldn't do anymore for houses. We're probably not ruling against it, but I was quite surprised to see that there was individual accesses for each one, and it might be around maximising what you can get on the site, I expect, because to put in a singular access road and a singular point would probably take, you probably couldn't then get 5 houses on there. But I just want for clarification, is this an allowable way of getting access?
Thank you. We're going to bring highways in to just confirm.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. No, I thought for a minute we weren't going to have a meeting, but it wasn't needed. Just to confirm that in a scenario like this for a small number of dwellings, if it was a significant number of dwellings, then no, you wouldn't be able to go for individual accesses. It's 4 accesses to serve the 5 dwellings. And due to the nature of the highway around it and the nature of the development around it, it would be in keeping. So it would be wrong to suggest that it wouldn't be a feasible solution.
Okay, you happy with your reply, Heather? Right, thank you. Thank you. Who would like to be the next one to speak? Edric.
Apart from the access and the overshadowing of the houses behind, I appreciate we're already looking at the access at the moment. If we're looking at the indicative design with the green bridges to keep the bat roost, that's when they're sleeping, so keep the foraging bat run going, how long is that going to take to grow? Or is it going to be, I plant a few scabby little bushes and in 10 years' time they'll be back in place? Would be my blunt way of looking at it. So I'm not so sure that would satisfy the requirement for the foraging bats. If you're going to plant bushes and then have to wait how many years before the road for the bats is complete, so to speak. That's a really poor way of putting that, but I think you'll get where I'm going.
Okay, thank you, Edric. And I don't see any hands going up. Oh, Heather's coming back again. Good.
I am, sir. It's me again. Forgive me. I should be quicker at this. So it's outside the development zone. It's the development area, and we don't have at this point think about things like nutrient mitigations or so on at all. But what would be the driver to do this? Is it because we don't have the kind of, we're in the tilted balance situation, so we're picking up the houses where we can? Just that I've got that one. And Councillor Ham's question about who actually owned the property, did we get an answer to that one about who the ownership is?
Does that matter actually? In to be realistic, because you no, it's not material, and so it doesn't count. Sorry, Phil. But, it is an interesting question, by the way. Hey, so no one else wishes to speak. No, Edric, you're coming back again.
I'm guessing where this is going. I'm going to propose we refuse this against officer recommendation.
Okay, is there anybody to back Edric? Second him.
No, I'm not. Thank you. I was just wondering the reasons on which you were going to do it, because if it's I hate this, but if it's a case of it's against the tilted balance, okay, it's outside of development, but we'd have to have a good reason for saying why we were objecting to it in the face of tilted balance. So I'd just love to hear what you're saying on that one.
Because it's outside the development limit and also the overshadowing the neighbouring properties, if that's allowable. It's no, aren't these lower? So it's the view. The other it's the view, yeah, and the development limit of a very small village.
Do you want to say anything, Martin?
And I've said this in previous committees. The fact that because we're in the tilted balance situation, the fact that it's outside development limits on its own is not on its own as a sustainable reason for refusal. But if you're saying that the visual impact on the existing residential properties is an element, obviously there's no right to a view for properties, so it's just what the impact on those existing residents would be from the houses across the road.
Okay, more, Heather. Okay, don't worry, I'm only teasing you. We've got a motion.
I was only going to be really quick. I mean, what I'd love to see on this triangle is a bunch of lovely social housing. There's like small social housing to allow people to stay in the village, the people they love and all that sort of stuff. But that's probably not, we can't mandate that. And my fear would be if we vote against the officer recommendation on this, I fear that an appeal would come forward and it would come in through anyway. No, and I'm not frightened of appeals for appeal's sake, but I'm just not sure that our reasons for disagreeing is strong enough. So I'm conflicted because I'd love to say no to it because it does feel a bit opportunistic. And if the parish don't like it, I don't like that either. We're all parish and town councils here, I think. So I don't want to go against that either, but I'm just struggling to see a strong enough reason to go against the officer decision. And I'm not trying to go get, it's just a warning. And everyone else might disagree with me and that's fine. But I'm just concerned that the reasons are not strong enough to get through an appeal query.
I'm going to come in there as well, Heather, because I have the same feeling as yourself. And I don't say that very often, but I do. And I'm never biased at all. But I do feel that the reasons for refusal are not strong enough. And I think they would need to be, a lot stronger.
Okay, having listened to the debate and listened to our legal advice, I'll back down. I'll withdraw it. Because I appreciate I do have a seconder on that who may feel differently and then want to propose in the light of me withdrawing my proposal. But maybe I jumped in there too quickly, and having listened to the balance is separate, I am now. I'm big enough to admit that maybe I was wrong. I will withdraw my proposal.
Yeah. To withdraw the proposal, the seconder would need to agree to withdraw as well. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So at the moment, the motion is still on the table as to refuse.
Okay, thank you. So we know the motion is still there. Martin, over in the corner, please.
Chair, as we've had the suggestion of what the parish council opinion is, I'm looking at the portal now and can't see it. Just wondering if one of the officers could confirm that has been received. Because I would say that's material to know that the parish council opinion has been received.
Yeah, can we find that in there? It's in the report, isn't it, I think? Yeah, it is in the report, Martin.
It says, Mr. Chairman, quite clearly, Parish Council recommend refusal on the following grounds, and they give the 3 grounds for their refusal. And I think I mentioned those at the beginning, to which I've added, if this proposal was for 5 smaller properties that were in keeping with the village properties that exist, there would not be such a big issue. But 3 4-bedroom houses, 2 3-bedroom houses on this, what I call a pokey bit of land. They've got no gardens. They'll have very little recreation facility. And I think Councillor Ham mentioned whose land it was. And it is very likely Somerset County Council land at the moment because there's about 1,000 tonnes of surface dressing material tipped on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
I'll withdraw.
Alex.
Can I just clarify, on lack of understanding, all other matters reserved? Does that mean there's going to be a subsequent application to come in on this place? And in which case, yeah.
Yeah, so it means we'll get a reserved matters application where we would consider the appearance and all other matters apart from the principal and access.
Okay, Alex, you happy there? Benty?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you please repeat, Jennifer, what you just said, that it would be all matters concerned, and then it will just be about the what material, etc., etc. So the buildings will still be 3 excessively big houses and 2 not so excessively big.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. So outline is for 5 dwellings. How those dwellings are made up in terms of bedroom size, appearance, that can all be decided at reserve matters.
Yeah, so it could be even bigger than what is suggested. So I think, considering it is Somerset land, considering it is 5 houses, considering the parish council are against it and want it to be refused, then I think I will stay with that, and I will probably not get anybody that will back me up. But hey ho, that's how the piano is playing.
I think I'd like us to ignore the fact that Benty said it's Somerset land, because we don't know, and it's irrelevant as well, to be quite truthful. So I just thought I'd put that bit in there. But thank you for the information, Benty. But we're not sure it's correct. Okay, thank you. Right, so we're looking at, where are we at the moment? Who else? Oh, Barry, you wish to come back?
Yes, please, Mr. Chairman. The planning officers said that they get outline planning permission for 5 dwellings and they can be changed, but they will get outline planning permission for 3 4-bedroom dwellings and 2 3-bedroom dwellings. But that's what they've asked for.
Through you, Chair. Through you, Chair. The plan there is an illustrative plan only. The description of developments, which is what the outline will relate to, is 5 dwellings. Doesn't say the size of them. So when reserve matters come in, that's when the size will be determined. That's when the layout and the appearance and the landscaping will be determined. So you cannot say at this point that they're going to be big houses, whatever that means, or small houses. That's to be determined at a later date. Just while I'm speaking, it's just to say that it's still the proposal is to refuse the application on the grounds it's outside development limits and the impact on the neighbouring amenity.
Okay. Does anybody else? Alex? Yeah.
Just quickly, just based on that, I just think going back to Heather's point, I think we're there. I think in that if we refuse this, I think it's probably just going to be appealed and be overturned. So I don't really see that we're in a position to refuse it at the minute.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. We'll go to the vote now. So, Heather, would you like to? No, it wasn't Heather. It was Benty, wasn't it? Would you like to repeat your proposal, please?
Chair, can I just check who seconded Benter? Nobody has yet. No.
Sorry, Chairman.
That's okay. No problem, Martin.
So the Vice Chair proposed it. Benty seconded it. Vice Chair withdrew it, but because the seconder didn't withdraw it, it is still standing. Okay, that's what the standing orders say. So no, it doesn't. No, the proposal is still there because the proposer and the seconder both need to agree to withdraw. Okay, as we had earlier. So the reasons for refusal that were given were that the development's outside development limits, and it would be harmful to have a visual harmful impact on the residential neighbours across the road.
Okay, we'll move to the vote on this one because we're thinking on Benty's one. So all in favour of Benty's motion? Or all against?
7.
Okay, so the motion falls.
Alternative motion now to approve.
Yeah, so I need an alternative motion, please. Thank you, Heather.
Seconded.
Oh, as my colleague to my left absolutely anticipated, I was going to say I'd like to propose in line with the officer motion, officer recommendation.
Thank you, and seconded by Jane. Lovely. All those in favour?
7.
Oh, and Claire.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. Sorry.
All those against?
1, 2, 3. Yeah.
3. Okay, motion is carried. And 1 abstention. Thank you.
I don't want to miss out. I think I put my hand down too early. If I'm being recorded as the abstention, that's not me. No. Okay, I voted for. Thank you.
Give me 2 seconds while I work out the next one. Okay, here we go. Our next one is Ivy Cottage at Quarry Lane, Lyle Mendip.
Chair, this is the one we were swapping round.
Oh, we swapped these, haven't we? Yeah, that's correct. So we're going to the next one, which is again in Quarry Lane, Lyle Mendip, and it is the demolition of existing barn to form a terrace of 3 single-storey dwellings. Okay. Yeah, and we'll do the access afterwards, yeah. Okay, so would we like to commence, please?
Yep, that's me again. Okay, so this is land to the rear of Ivy Cottage, Quarry Lane, Lyle Mendip, and oh, hang on, sorry, I haven't swapped my presentations over. 1 second. Okay, so same address. This is the demolition of an existing barn to form a terrace of 3 single-storey dwellings. So the site itself is circled in red. It's to the northeast of Lyle Mendip. This is a close-up of the site. As you see, that's the barn that's being demolished, and it's proposed to replace that with 3 terrace dwellings. And location plan of the site, as you see, the access proposed here is from Quarry Lane to the south. It's the existing access used for Ivy Cottage. And existing and proposed site plan. So the existing site plan shows the barn that's to be demolished, and the proposed site plan shows the proposed dwellings, which, as you can tell, are very similar in scale as the existing barn. Proposed elevations of the 3 dwellings, a single story, and the proposed floor plan. So although these are detached here, they're not detached, they all run as a terrace properties. Okay, this existing and proposed sections. Existing section of the barn is on the left, and the proposed section of the dwellings are on the right. Although the ridge height of the dwellings is higher from the new ground level, they've taken the ground level down in order that the overall height remains the same on site. So they've excavated the ground levels. So there was a previous consent on the site for the conversion of the barn, originally under Class Q, and then as a full application into 3 terrace dwellings. So these are the plans for the approved conversion. And photos of the site. So the works have partially commenced. The dwellings under construction are on the right, and the red arrow is pointing to what remains of the barn. Okay, again, these are the proposed dwellings. Okay, and this is taken from the existing barn level. As you can see, the new buildings are set down in the ground. And this is what's left of the existing barn. Okay, and the application is recommended for approval with conditions as set out in the officer report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're looking at the speakers. I think we have Councillor Vicky Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned about this development, particularly with the history that goes with it. If you look back onto that history, you will see there's various different routes that they've taken. Originally, it was to be a barn conversion, as we've heard, and approval for it was refused by the planning authority because of the mineral objection from Halcombe Quarry. In my mind, that objection from mineral rights still holds. This is a new build construction, as it says in the officer report, to be viewed as that now instead of a conversion. This is the same site, councillors may remember, and officers I'm sure will, that the 40 houses appeal went on, where we had the inspector, and the inspector refused that appeal. This is the same site, it's not a different site. And therefore, we're really concerned that the inspector said, there's a barn there, recognise that, but it's old, it's fitting into what is agricultural land. I will not support new building. And this is about the distraction of our grade 1 listed church and the harmful effect that it would have on it. At least, surely, we should have had a conservation report on this to back up if anything has changed since an inspector said that's what should be the situation. The parish council requests that you refuse this application on basis of sustainability and local need in the village. We have several bungalows still for sale in the village from recent developments. We had a needs survey undertaken. We don't need any more housing in our village. We are non-sustainable in planning views, and I've said this before at this committee, and honestly I'm fed up of an agent coming in behind me and telling me we have a shop and we have a cafe. We had a shop during COVID. The cafe, you can walk into our church at any time and make yourself a cup of tea and put the donation in. If you call that a cafe, then so be it. We have the same implications on the mineral extraction as the previous refusal, particularly the impact. We are particularly concerned about the harmful impact on the landscape of the setting and the grade 1 listed church, which has not been given appropriate consideration in line with the recent appeal decision on this site. Councillors, I ask you to refuse this application. We don't need it in Lyell Mendip.
Thank you very much. And next we have David Essex. Do we have David here? Yeah. Oh, right, that's David, yeah.
Find those moves. Yeah.
Sorry, but
Okay, David, fire away.
thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and councillors, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. Having read the officer's report, I've really very little to add, as the report covers pretty well all aspects. Excuse me. I will, however, further clarify what I consider one of the main issues which was concerned by the parish council, and that's why the conversion could not be carried out as previously detailed submitted in the structure report, which was actually approved by Mendip District Council. Firstly, the existing ceiling height was 1.9 metres, but to be compliant with building regs, a 200mm insulation was required on top of the existing slab, and then a ceiling finish and a floor finish, and this would have left a ceiling height of 1.65 metres and the window and door heads at 1.45, and this is far too low and non-compliant with building regs. The only way to overcome this was to lower the ground floor, which really suits as much it was made up ground, particularly on the front section. In this way, the ridge height remains exactly the same as the existing, as was clearly shown on the photo by the officer. Again, I believe the ward member raised this and was under the impression that the ridge was raised, but I reiterate it remains as the existing. Doing it this way, though, is considered more than the order allows, hence the need for this planning application. It also enhanced the finishings with air source heat pumps, solar, battery storage and grey water harvesting. So it's more up-spec dwellings and triple glazing. As stated in the officer's report, which is very full and appropriate, and a conversion to 3 dwellings, which has already been approved here by Mendit. And this application is also supported by most of the, if not all of the adjoining neighbours. I'll just say a few words about the access, which comes next, which again is covered by the officer. And just to reiterate, I think concern was expressed regarding the infill of the existing access, which I confirmed to the officer that the existing indigenous hedge will be extended across the access, which I believe is acceptable. And the new access formed in the existing wall, which actually was rebuilt 10 years ago. All of this was acceptable to highways, and I would therefore respectfully ask you to support your officer's recommendation and permit these applications. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers. Do you need a hand to?
No, it's okay.
Seat? No? Okay.
Mr. Bissett, just to say, because the members are considering both applications one by one, case officer will do another presentation after they've considered this first application. So you might want to stay there just in case you have anything further to say.
Good thinking, Simon. Yes, thank you. Right, I think first then, now we're going to move on. We'll go to the ward councillors first. I think Phil wants to be first this time. We let Barry first last time, so Phil this time.
No, I didn't want to be first. Just a couple of questions on this one. As the original permission was given for a Class Q, are you allowed to destroy your Class Q building and rebuild at a different level and a different size? Question 1. Also, we're obviously looking at retrospective because building has started already without permission. And the third thing I wanted to talk about was highway issues. I know that's coming up in a minute, but if we refuse the one in a minute, we're only going to be left with the existing access, which is on the plan. And that comes out right on the corner where the school, where we decided that we unwisely would move the 30-mile-an-hour sign 2 months ago at another planning board meeting. If we go for the new access point, we'll have to move it again. And then on top of that, recently, another development, another 20 yards up the road, has just been refused on no grounds at all. So I think you need to be careful what you do here.
Okay, thank you, Phil. First, I think Simon would like to answer some of the questions, and Emma, maybe the last one.
Yeah, just to clarify, members, clearly you'll see from the report pack, as recorded in the planning history section, the landowner secured prior approval to convert the existing barn into dwellings. And again, as part of that process, they submit information which is considered, and the planning authority has to say, yes, based on what you're telling us you're going to do, we consider that that wouldn't require any significant alteration to the property, and therefore you're telling us you can do it as a conversion. And yes, we agree, you can have your prior approval to do that. So that process, as was set out clearly in the report back, and as you've heard, has happened. And the landowner, the applicant, did have prior approval to convert the barn as it stood. The fact that they have demolished the barn means that they no longer have the benefit of that prior approval. And that's why they have chosen to submit this application to now secure planning permission to complete the development, if you like, afresh. So I hope that's clear on that point. The third point is obviously something that Emma's going to advise you of. What was the second point, Chair? Sorry, in terms of Councillor Ham raised.
Yeah,
It is retrospective, and obviously, if the council now make a decision to refuse, contrary to the officer recommendation, then the council will have to determine what steps to take next. But the recommendation is for approval as a departure.
Thank you, Simon. Emma, your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was poised and ready. With regards to carrying on from where Simon left off, the prior approval process itself does also require an assessment of highway safety issues. And as that prior approval process wasn't considered to have a severe harm for 3 terraced dwellings, we cannot make an alternative decision with the existing access for 3 new build terraced dwellings. That would just make a mockery of the whole scheme. With regards to moving of speed limits, we are all aware in this room, I think I've told several of us several times, it does require a traffic regulation order, and if that traffic regulation order is successful, then obviously the speed limit can be moved, but it will have been assessed based on the speed limit that is there currently.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Phil. You can come back quickly, yeah.
If the traffic regulation order goes through for the previous application, that's fine, because we agreed that. But if this one goes through, you'll have to go through the whole process again.
Do you wish to come back again or not?
I'm more than happy to come back, but unfortunately, I'm a little confused. I'm not quite understanding what process we're going to have to go back through again. Sorry, is that the new access that's the next planning application that we're discussing? Because obviously, I'm trying to keep the 2 separate. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Barry, have you got any comments as to the other
Thank you, Mr.
ward
Chairman.
councillor? Not the same, please.
Not the same, no. I just reiterate what the parish council have listed in their objections to this development, some of which haven't yet been mentioned. One of them is light into the area over and above what's needed, taking down hedges and walls, which they don't agree with. The loss of the setting to the church, which the planning inspector has long recognised on the last appeal. And there was the business about sterilisation of reserves next to the existing Halcombe quarry, which they were not going to allow the development of the 49 houses because that would endanger the quarry's future. Now, all that seems to have been not important anymore, but surely it must be important. It must be taken into effect. And if you approve this particular application, it's been approved with what local councillors, the parish council, deem to be quite a dangerous access. We've not got approval for the second improved access yet. We've got 3 houses coming out of what is considered a dangerous access. And when that was approved, there were people voting on it in this committee, probably don't even know where Lyon Mendip is. Never mind this dangerous bend right on top of a school where parents park to drop off their children. So the whole thing is fraught with problems, and I would defer to the parish council and say I shall vote against this application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Barry. Yes, Heather.
Thank you. This is really difficult, and I'm not coming at this with any particular view. It's for clarification, really, because it seems it's quite muddy with lots of things happening on the site over and over. Am I right in deducing that when it was going to be a conversion of the barn into 3 houses, it was on the basis of the existing, difficult, but existing access? So when considering this application, which doesn't change the access, we're going to have, we'd be on a sticky wicket to disagree when it already gone through before on the same situation. I'm just clarifying with, is that something that is difficult for us to do at this point because it's a previously approved one? Just for clarity. And then, where is this within our development zone? Forgive me because I should know that.
Who would like to answer? Simon?
Councillor Shearer, Lyme Mendip doesn't have a settlement boundary, so it's outside of development boundary. But you can see the location of the site in relation to what you would call the main settlement of Lyme Mendip. So it's outside of settlement boundary and it's adjacent to the boundary of Lyme Mendip as it is. In terms of your question about would we struggle to defend and appeal if we were to refuse it on highway grounds, as Emma advised, the council's already considered delivering 3 units on the site, albeit as a conversion. You're now considering 3 new units, but in terms of transport impact, number of movements, etc., it wouldn't be any different.
Right, thank you, Simon. Everybody happy? Martin?
Yeah, I'm a bit confused as how this affects mineral extraction. I think I understand, but I'm not totally convinced. So if somebody builds houses near a quarry, they can then turn around and say, I don't actually like what the quarry is doing because it's affecting my lifestyle. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, Councillor Dimmer, again, if you look at the location plan there, and if you look at the report pack, we've covered it. But probably what is key and relevant for you is, Jenny, if you can just highlight the site where the council have already granted permission for 3 houses. So where Jenny is, where the cursor is, the council's already granted plan permission for 3 new build houses in that location. And as you can see, the location of this application site is equidistant to the main quarry area. From a planning policy consideration, we have to assess it against that issue. We have done, and we haven't had any objections from the relevant officer who deals with waste and minerals.
Sorry, I get where it is. It's just the procedure, it's the principle that you can buy a house and on top of a quarry, and then retrospectively say, oh, I actually like that quarry. I don't like what it's doing. I mean, aren't you buying into the fact there's a quarry next door?
I'm not suggesting. I mean, if you know the site, the school's also adjacent. So
I do, yeah.
You're right. Obviously, yeah, buyer beware. Maybe.
I'm just trying to figure out how relevant that objection is. That's all. I think I've got it.
From our point of view, we're not recommending that it's sufficient to refuse the application.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Edric, you're next.
For clarity, I'd just like to ask about future development of the quarry and where hell, if anybody can answer this one, and where Phil might know this because he's been on the Quarry Advisory Board for a while, whereabouts we sit with, is it the 15-year mineral supply in relation to quarries? I don't know if he knows anything on that. I stick them on the spot because I've been vaguely involved with it. Phil might know more than me. If there's an answer in the room, whereabouts we sit with the 15-year mineral supply and the future development of Helcombe Quarry, or where Hell can be worked out under the current limit, which I think, is it 2042? Would Councillor Ham be allowed to answer that for me, please, as somebody knows more than me?
Do we have anybody to answer that question?
I think Phil might have.
Yeah, the permission for Helcombe Quarry is to 2042. It should be, any houses should be, I believe it's 200 metres from the quarry. These houses, with the appeal, one of the material reasons for the appeal is that exactly where this red ring is was too close to the quarry. So the planning inspector turned down the 40 houses as it was too close to the quarry.
Okay, thank you. Martin's going to come in.
Yeah, just on that, I'm looking at the inspector's decision. This is the application for 40 houses. It was within the mineral safeguarding area, but the inspector didn't use that as a reason for refusal. There are other reasons why the inspector refused that, but that wasn't one of them. And I think Simon was the case officer for that appeal, I think.
He didn't need to use it, but it was a material reason.
Okay, thank you. I think we've heard a little bit about that, and Martin. So Alex is next. How do you respond to Alex?
Short question, which might have a short answer. Just on that basis on minerals, can I ask why there's no response from the Somerset Minerals Planning Policy on this?
We obviously can't, they were consulted, but they didn't respond. Perhaps because, again, they've been involved in responding on Carlton's application.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? I'm looking around for somebody. Phil, you want to come back again, do you? Okay.
I spoke to that senior quarry mineral officer at county, and he was against it. And that was literally 2 or 3 weeks ago.
As I just pointed out, there's nothing on the record. That's not good. Martin.
I mean, I accept fully what Phil's telling us, but if we haven't got a report in front of us, if they haven't responded to the report, that's appalling. If that's what the officer's saying, then we should have that information in front of us. This is this is crucial to this decision. I would like that to be minuted.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Alex, you wish to come back?
Yeah, I'm just not sure how we can make a decision. Do we make the decision on the basis that there is no report and therefore we consider nothing towards that? Or?
Yeah, okay, Martin's going to come in, our legal.
Well, I suggest there's two ways of approaching that. Either because there's been no objection from that officer, you disregard it, or if you're, as a committee, not comfortable with that and want more information around that, then there's an option to defer to get that information and bring it back.
Thank you, Martin. Benty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask, is it really real that for the second time we are deferring something? Keep deferring is a very, very bad thing because it comes back and bites everybody. Plus, it's annoying for those who put in an application. It's annoying for the whole of the system. We do not defer. We make a decision whether we like it or we don't like it. Sorry.
No, thank you, Benty. You're entitled to your opinion. Thank you. Heather?
Yeah, so just one question. When the Q application was put forward to convert to 3 properties, was there a response on the quarry proximity for that application? Because it would be almost identical.
Oh, that goes to you, Simon, I think.
Again, if you look at the planning history, Councillor Chair, there were two applications for the Q conversion. And the second one that was submitted, there was a response from the minerals and the minerals policy team, and it wasn't favourable.
Sorry, so it was the quarry team on one of the 2 applications was saying it wasn't favourable.
Yeah, so to start with, the council granted approval and under the prior approval process. Yeah, and then that consent lapsed because they're viable for 3 years. They made a second application under Class Q, and there was a comment from the minerals team on that occasion, and it wasn't favourable.
And just for clarity, just because we've got a smattering of experience on this site, the 3 that's slightly south and east of this one that we've already gained permission, what was the quarry's concept on answer on that, or the quarry officers' answer?
Bear with me while I put the number in the
Mr. Chair, could I ask a question while we just?
Yeah,
working
go
there?
for it, Martin.
If anybody can answer this one, I'm assuming the outer rim of that quarry will not be expanding, but they would be simply going deeper rather than expanding outwards. Anyone can answer that. Sorry, I've thrown that into it as another question.
I think we could go back to Councillor Ham again, who's got some experience on these matters, please.
I would think the western side of the quarry would not be brought any further west, but I would think it would probably go southwest if they get permission to expand. They've got permission to go deeper at the moment, so probably won't need to for 20 years.
Right, thank you, Phil. Edric, you wanted to say something?
Sorry, yeah, just quickly, I've got something to look up, so I just quickly wanted to say, in answer to Councillor Dimmery, bringing up the OS maps, I have OS mapping on here. If they did want to expand any further to the west, they'd have to move a public footpath. Now, I know that's been done before in quarries. We've looked at them since I've been on council loads of times, but that would bring it very close to an existing depot. I know the depot is part of their site because I don't know the site very well. I'm just looking at OS 1 to 25,000 mapping. And I think, as Councillor Ham says, if they were going to develop it, I assume it would be very much in the vicinity of the southwest. But that's purely looking at what I can see on OS mapping. That's conjecture, not fact.
Okay, thank you. So everybody is not happy, but we're where we are. Heather.
Yeah, not happy, but where we are, I think, is probably very well put, Chair. What I was going to say was that a couple of things. One is that there's lots of people around the table who really don't like this for all kinds of different reasons. But and asking the questions, we've done really well, I think, to show that there's quite a mixed bag of responses from some of our stakeholders. And the reason why I think that's important is not because I was hoping for an answer, but I didn't think there would be one. I think there's probably enough muddiness in there that if we went against the officer recommendation and it was appealed, there'd be plenty of reasons to actually throw the appeal out, would be a fear. Now, that, again, I always say it's not the reason to do something, but I'm struggling to find something strong enough to actually say that we have to say no when previously we've said yes. That's all I'm thinking of. I'm also going to just take the floor for one more second to say, my experience as only for 4 years now as a ward councillor and being involved with planning matters in all kinds of ways, people do get very upset with the idea of retrospective planning applications, and there feels like a natural justice that's sometimes been missed. And I think a lot of what I'm hearing is a little bit of that around the table as well. And that's meant with no disrespect to you, sir, because there's all kinds of reasons why retrospective comes up. But I think some of that is around some of the unhappiness that goes around on occasion. But I think, so I'm just acknowledging that because I think it's fair, and I get that quite a lot from many different people in different circumstances, not here, not in this case. So I'm prepared to propose that we actually go forward with the officer recommendation. Just again, test the water in the room. I may or may not get a seconder, but I just think I'm struggling at this point to see a reason to say no at this point.
Okay, thank you, Heather. So you're proposing that we go for approval with the officer recommendation.
I need to clarify some public.
Okay, Edric wants to clarify something.
So can I just clarify, in relation to the previous application, which were the cottages on the corners, there were no objections from the minerals team. I've just got clarification on that. So the one we had, the ones we had which were approved, which are actually closer, there were no objections to the minerals team. Sorry, Heather, I just wanted to clarify that as I was looking up for signing.
Okay, thank you, Edric. That's important information, actually. Do we have a seconder for Heather? Alex?
Yeah, happy to second.
Right, thank you. Do we have anybody else for any more right now, bearing in mind the time? Well, not bearing in mind the time because it takes as long as it takes, but nobody else appears to have anything to say, so we will move to the vote. So, all those in favour of going with the officer recommendation for approval proposed by Councillor Shearer, Heather, please raise your hands in the air. 7. All those against? 4. And any abstentions? 1. Okay, thank you. So that is carried. Thank you. So we now move back to the access application. So would somebody like to talk that one through for us, please?
Yep, so it's back to me. Okay, so this is the same site, slightly further north. It's the creation of a new access and driveway. Oh, sorry, I'll make this full screen. Ready? Sorry, I'm using someone else's laptop because mine's about to die any second, so I didn't want it to die halfway through the presentation, but this doesn't seem to be coming up full screen. I mean, I can do it like, it's working like this, it just won't work full screen. I don't know if this is sufficient. Yeah.
That's it. Can we hold on a second while Shane sort of look?
No, don't worry.
Are you sure? We'll give you a couple of minutes, Shane. We can give you a couple of minutes. Okay. Okay, everyone is back. Are we okay IT wise to get started now? Please, okay, fire away then, please.
Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. Right, so as you can see, it's a very similar site. It's just slightly to the northeast of the barns, again to the east of Lyle Mendip. And it's a closer section of the site, so the access will come off of Quarry Lane, just probably more to the north of where that red circle is, and then cut across the field using an existing field access to gain access to the proposed terraced free dwellings. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these location plans show the access outlined in red. Obviously, the land owned by the applicant is outlined in blue, so any visibility displays are in the ownership of the applicant as well, and therefore can be controlled. Next slide, please. And more detail of the access. So there is an existing field access onto Quarry Lane, just to the south of the proposed access. It's proposed that is infilled with hedgerow to match the existing hedge further to the south, and the new access is created just slightly further to the north. And then it will utilise an existing field access where it cuts through from one field to the actual site where the terrace dwellings will be. Okay, next slide. And some photos of the site. So you can see there's already a kind of rough track there leading up to the terrace dwellings. So this is looking back towards Quarry Lane itself. The photo on the right shows the existing field access between the two fields. Next one. So the photo on the left is taken from that existing field access down towards Quarry Lane. You can see the existing field access onto Quarry Lane in the distance. And the photo on the right is taken from Quarry Lane looking back up towards that field gate between the two fields. Okay, next one. Yeah, so this is the existing access that goes onto Quarry Lane. Okay, next slide. And this is to show the visibility from the proposed location of the new access. So the one on the left is looking north and the one on the right will be looking south. Okay, I think that's the last one. Yep, and again, the recommendation is for approval with conditions as per the officer reports. Okay, thank you.
Lovely stuff. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to go on to Councillor Vicky Taylor again, please.
Hello again. I was hoping we wouldn't get this far, but here we are, so that's okay. We're concerned about the proper considerations not being given to the impact of the proposed road on the landscape. I think actually, if you looked at those pictures carefully, you'll see that there's a definite incline. You're going to be cutting into a field. You're going to have to shutter it. You're going to have retaining walls, and you're carving a roadway into what is currently an agricultural area. We've already heard that they have planning and they have access through another route. To be putting another access onto Quarry Road, some of you will remember I've been here before about Quarry Road and the concerns we have as local people and the community about that road, which has pinch points, etc. The idea that they're going to move the 30-mile-an-hour limit is just fine, but can you, as a planning authority, agree to this planning application when they haven't got a traffic regulation order in place? So it might be refused. Legislatively, I would be concerned that you can actually predetermine what's going to happen on a traffic regulation order. Would challenge the fact that there's no conservation, again, no conservation officer report on it. We know there's bats in that area. We're cutting into what is agricultural land. It will then create it as development land. I don't know whether it's worth mentioning the effect of the outlook on the church, because obviously this council seems to be disregarding the view of the inspection officer at the appeal of those 40 houses. So there you are. I'm not happy, and it's for you to debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers. And next we have, I believe it's David Bissix again. Bissix, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name.
Yeah, thanks very much. I already spoke about this, about the access. It is incredibly much safer where the proposal is to where the existing one is. I know it had permission for that existing one, for the conversion for the three dwellings and for the three rebuilt units, but it is right where when the schools are coming out there, it's parking everywhere right on that bend, and it is not good. And this is a massive improvement. And to be honest, I don't agree with the levels. I don't think there isn't retaining walls or anything like that necessary here. And it's the same access in the same place, other than footpaths are removed because we don't need those because it's only 3 units. But it's the same access for the and same visibility displays that was okay for the 40 houses. I know that was refused, but again, highways had no objections to that. Here we are, we've got the same access, same visibility. It's just a 5-metre width road, but just the footpaths are removed because we don't need those for 3 units. That's pretty much it, really.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you.
Very important. I think at this stage, I'm going to bring in Emma from Highways to give her opinion. I'm bringing in Sam. Okay. Share the workload.
Thank you, Chair. We've looked at this based on what's previously been approved. This particular access is identical to that which was approved for a 40-house scheme, at which point, whilst they were aware that a TRO would need to be extended, or they wanted to extend the TRO, and they've offered to do that, the visibility displays that they are able to achieve are in line with the current speeds well, they're actually in excess of what is required for the current speeds based on the speed survey that was carried out at the time. So it's deemed a safe and suitable access. And in fact, although when considering it, we can't consider the existing one to represent a severe highway safety concern, what they're proposing now is considered a betterment to what exists currently serving the site. So given what we've deemed to be an acceptable improvement in terms of access, and yes, there will need to be an extension to the TRO if they do so wish to go ahead and move the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit for the benefit of the village. In terms of the actual highway safety implications, it is considered safe based on the speed limits that were speed surveys that were carried out and the speed conditions currently. So.
Lovely, thank you for that, Sam. Very important information. Next, we go to, yes, Phil, we can let you in again, no problem.
Map of the map with the entrance on. Again.
Chair, whilst this is being brought up, just to remind you that the meeting, there's another meeting booked in this room at 6:30. Okay, for
Yeah, I am aware. That's why I'm pushing it. So we've got one more item after this one.
Yeah, just wanted you to be aware.
I'll speak, Nick, and hope a map arrives.
Okay.
On the map, it showed where the existing 30-mile-an-hour limit is. Where are they proposing to take it to? Because the visibility on that flat piece of map looks fine, but actually there's a brow and a dip there, and it's not fine. I drive it every time I come to mend it. It is a dangerous piece of road. And to bring another entrance out where they're suggesting is totally wrong at 60 miles an hour.
Oh, Sam, would you like to reply to Phil, please?
In the bottom corner, we've got where it is now. We agreed with the last application 2 months ago that we were going to move it out, so they got visibility. You then come out to this bend. That bend looks as though it's flat. It's not. There's dead nap there where you can't see what's coming.
So the speed surveys that were carried out, they are based on the visibility displays are based on the 85th percentile of those speed surveys, and the 30-mile-an-hour southbound and 28-mile-an-hour northbound were what was taken into consideration at the 85th percentile. It's also saying something here about what was that, Emma? Yeah, they were taking into account the vertical considerations. So
Can you come back very quickly? Come back. Yeah, if you've got the evidence, but the evidence shows that cars are driving quite slow, 28 to 30 in a 60-mile area. Why are they driving slow? You put another entrance in, it's catastrophe.
Okay, I think we've explored that as far as we can at the moment. Thank you. Barry, I will give you the next shot because you're the other divisional or ward councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would only ask of the planning officer whether if this is approved, whether the previous entrance will be blocked up.
It won't be because it already serves 2 properties, I believe, currently. So it's been in existence for quite a while previously.
So this is merely an extra entrance from the road. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Does anyone else wish to speak on this one? Okay, Heather?
Just to say, thank you very much for explaining all of that. It's really helpful. I think, again, we find ourselves in a similar position to the previous one. I think, I'm not sure we could disagree with that access for 3 houses when it's been previously accepted for 40, unless something has materially changed in the time frame around speeds or usage of the road or whatever. It's incredibly hard. I mean, we could do it, obviously, if we were all reminded to, but I'd be reluctant if we did.
Thank you, Heather. Doesn't look like anybody else needs to say anything or wishes to say anything. So can we have a proposer, please? Alex, you're proposing that we go with officer recommendation for approval, are you?
Correct.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder? Edric is seconding.
Actually, Tony, he's been quiet all evening.
All right, yeah, Tony's had a quiet afternoon, so we're gonna put you as the seconder, Tony. Okay. Right, thank you. Next, we will move to the vote. All those in favour?
7.
All those against? 4. And abstentions? 1. Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much. And then we're going to quickly move on to the next one, which is the planning application in Frome for land at the south side of Station Approach Frome. And I will remind officers and members that we are supposed to finish at 6 p.m. Thank you. Did we have a problem?
Shall we do it somehow? Because when we try and share it full, for some reason, it's not downloading. So if members are happy with receiving the presentation on that basis, I'd suggest we continue.
I would suggest that we get on with it, to be quite truthful.
Thank you, Chair. So we have an advert application here at Frome. It's for an externally illuminated advert, paper paste. Oh, it's not coming up now. So it's on Station Road and it is replacing a different application that was approved before. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think this is. Just to say, Chair, I will log out again and see if. Should be fun. Let's have a look. There we go.
Sorry, so it's an advert proposed on Station Road, paper and paste advert with external lighting. And if you go to the next slide, please. So this is the strip of land that it would be placed on. It's right there at the end of where that arrow is pointing. Next slide, please. Just to give a context of the area, we have quite a few retail units which have their own adverts, but that's just to give a context of the area. So next one. This is the proposed advert, which will be 6 meters long and 3 meters wide, and it will be inset in front of the foliage and vegetation, next to already some current sorts of, not adverts, there signs there, which you can see in the pictures later. But as you can see in that location plan, it's a bit clearer where it shows where exactly it will be sited. So it's right at the end near the junction entrance. This is the mock-up, the CGI mock-up of what will be there. As you can see, it's really from that aspect, you can see it, and you won't see it from the other way, but it's pretty much the same as the previous application, but it's paper paste. So just to give you so yeah, next one. This is the photo I took of the site currently. There's a few signs there of station signs and things like that, but I'm not sure if those signs are actually permitted there, but just to give a further context. Yeah, so this is looking opposite, so this is from where the advert would actually be. There's already quite a few signs there, just to give more context. And this is right next, opposite the across the road from where the sign would also be, just to give further context. And yeah, I recommend approval based on the fact that this is an improvement. So on the previous application. Sorry,
Okay.
I would recommend approval for this application.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And presentation, I think we get the idea now of where it is and the gist. Shane, you're actually down to. Oh. Yeah, you've been waiting there. You must be tired out and dehydrated. Yeah.
Okay. Right, well, thank you for the opportunity to speak about the planned paper and paste board at Station Approach in Frome. As you have been told already, the application is a replacement to a digital billboard which was approved on the 26th of January 2023. But this new application, just as the old one, has already received a lot of public objections. Following that application, which was approved, a massive outcry from the public councillors, media objecting on the grounds, but primarily safety and amenity, to this decision, and objections voiced prior to the application being approved. The developers, Wildstone Estates, listened to these concerns and decided to shelve that application and put forward this application for a paper and paste board. The failure of the planning board to listen to these objections at the time has now caused a major dilemma, and I have no sympathy for this self-made problem. The dilemma now is to refuse or approve this application. On the face of it, it seems to be a very simple decision. However, if you approve this application, then the billboard, as demonstrated by the Vicarage Road billboard, the only other billboard I'm aware of in Frome, will be vandalised and will become an eyesore. If you refuse this application, then Wildstones can, if they wish, revert to the already approved digital billboard application. This, as shown by the strength of public opinion, will also be vandalised and so also become an eyesore. However, I don't think Wildstones will revert to this application because of that very fact. Is it the desire of this board to allow an eyesore of this size to be the first impression for visitors of Frome, either by train or car, let alone the residents of Frome who will have to see it on a daily basis? Although this new application is favourable to the previous application, there are still many public concerns about safety and amenity relating to this new application. Safety at this junction is a major concern. Any distraction, no matter how small, has to be seriously considered. This is a very busy and complicated junction used by cars, vans, trucks, pedestrians and cyclists. Accidents occur on a regular basis, just 3 in the last 6 months that I alone have witnessed. And with the now confirmed bike project on the estate, the number of cyclists will no doubt increase at this junction. And obviously the train station results in a large number of pedestrians. Clearly, it is the pedestrians and cyclists that are most at risk at this junction. Any strict distraction to drivers, cyclists and pedestrians must be taken into consideration. The site currently consists of some trees and some small directional signage. One of them will be obstruct the billboard, but that's another thing. A large billboard will transform this location. Also, the illumination of the sign will increase the already overloaded light pollution in this area. So I urge this to be removed from the application if approval is going to even be considered. This also removes the added work and disturbance required to install and maintain an electricity supply at this location. I cannot condone any form of vandalism, but the strength of anger at this.
I'm afraid I have to ask you to wind up now, please. Your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, I'm really there. I cannot condone any form of vandalism at this point. The previous application and the consequences if a billboard is erected in this location is a real and needs to be considered, whatever decision you make. You have lots of justifiable reasons to object to this application, both on amenity and safety. So I urge you to object to it and listen to the vast majority of residents of Frome and consider what effect this will have on their town.
Thank you. Cheers. Okay, now we'll come to you, Shane.
Thank you. Yes, this is in my ward. I wanted to start very quickly. Again, no local residents know about this. There has been no letters delivered to local residents. This is going to affect residents in Frome far more than all these other applications because it is right smack in the middle of the main eastern entry point to Frome. So I want to make 3 points to do with amenity, climate and transport and safety. Okay, so Portway is the main eastern entry to Frome. It's where King Athelstan processed for his Witten in 978. It's now where people come off the train station and it's the main way into Frome. And, you know, on Frome Hoedown, we spend a lot of time each year weeding Portway to make it look nice, to give it people a nice entrance into Frome. Okay, I really don't think that a 6 metre by 3 metre billboard, of which there is only one other in Frome, which is unlicensed and doesn't have the owner's permission, it just sits there as corporate graffiti. And contrary to the applicant's assertion, the application will ensure the site preserves the setting of Frome Conservation Area, which will enhance the visible appearance of the location. Across the road is part of the Frome Conservation Area. Okay, next to this is B&Q, which has put up loads of adverts which it doesn't yet have permission for. So, you know, there's B&M behind, but they just have their street sign. So in my opinion, a 6 metre by 3 metre illuminated billboard can only make worse the setting of a conservation area and will certainly not enhance the visual appearance of our town as people enter it. Climate and illumination. Okay, this is not a digital billboard, but it is definitely an illuminated billboard. It's going to have strip lighting at the top. The brightness will be 200 CDM squared, 200 candles per meter. So basically, it's about as bright as your computer is in front of you. That's about 200 DCMS. But this is going to be over 6 meters by 3 meters. Now, my computer uses about 30 watts of energy for that little bit. What we don't know, and I would like to know, is how much energy this is going to use up, because we have climate emergency policies, and here we are proposing to just let an agent come in and light the place from 6 in the morning till 10 at night. No, it gets dark in the winter at 3:30. We're proposing to have a large computer screen at the entrance to Frome. I just think it's a profligate use of energy and will play a small part in increasing CO2 emissions, and so will have a small effect on our future health and safety. It's unnecessary.
I've got to ask you to wind up, sir.
Oh, okay, well, it's not a material consideration, but just getting people to consume more in a cost of living doesn't make sense. Transport and health and safety, it's a 4-road junction. There's been numerous accidents, small, okay, but billboards are designed to attract attention, which means they're designed to distract attention from the drivers and the roads. I just hate the idea that Frome is getting commercialised in this way. It's opposite a conservation area. It's not in keeping. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shane. Who's next? Claire. Yeah, Claire.
Why do we need, why do people want to put up a billboard? Why do they want to put it up there? And as the gentleman expressed, this, if we refuse this, it just stays as it is. I just am bewildered why there is one in the first place. So I might be forced to abstain because I just want to refuse this and get it removed because it's not the right place. And I just don't understand why this has happened. It's the wrong place.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Alex, did I see your hand?
You did, yeah. Can I ask for some advice as to whether a sign may or may not be graffitied as a material assessment note?
Doesn't count.
Nope.
It's it'd be a criminal offence, which is massive for the police. So.
Okay, I think Benty is first. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel huge sympathy for people in Frome. I have always, if I could, be against anything that was hung up on the rails in Shepton's roundabout that distracted people from focusing on the road and on other people in the traffic. So I am, and I don't, it is not my concern whether the existing piece of advertising, whether that looks horrible, because people can help themselves and remove it. Because that is how it is. If you don't like all dirty advertising, you can just remove them. And when it becomes derelict, remove them. That as a councillor, you can go out and do without anybody really wanting to harm you. So I am backing up the request of refusing this here, because it is not benefiting anybody. It is a nuisance. It is horrible. And I don't mind that the officer thinks it's brilliant and are backing up his proposal, but I most certainly don't. It's eyesore and it's dangerous.
Thank you, Benty. Heather, you're next, then Morrison's after that.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. I mean, personally, I can't bear digiboards and I'm not very keen on advertising, but that's a personal respect. But what I was going to say was, I think, as I understand it, just checking my clarification, my understanding, there is a digiboard in Frome, but it's elsewhere. Is there not an elsewhere one?
There's
yeah.
a
Illuminated.
okay. 6x3 building.
Oh, okay. So so elsewhere there's a huge but non-illuminated version of this, and that has been graffitied. The proposal here, as I understand it, there's already been permission given for a DigiStar board of that size there, but I guess in reaction to the negative whatever, they've come in with let's have it illuminated rather than a digiboard. So my question was, if for some reason we said no to this one, they could still go ahead with the digiboard anyway. It's not, one hasn't replaced the other. They've already got that permission, and this would be a negative. This would be not given them permission. Just want to clarify that one. So the issue is, even if we say no, even if they don't take us to appeal or whatever, they can just do which was the worst one potentially. So it's a horrible thing. But I'd ask the question, why does anybody want these things? They're bloody awful. Sorry, they're dreadful. But actually, it's not up to us what people want to do. It's like if somebody wants to be the fifth hairdresser on a street, we can't stop them. We just change the commercial use, and it's up to them business-wise. So as long as I've understood that now, that might help me vote, but it's a bit of a struggle, I think.
Thank you, Heather. I've got to go to Tessa a minute.
Yeah, thank you. I'd asked to come in, but actually Councillor Shearer summarised it quite well. They've got consent already for the digital board. They're now proposing alternative scheme in response to kind of community objections. So there is already a permission in place. If this isn't consented, they can implement the digital board on that site. So we do need to bear in mind that we need to be consistent in decision making. So if we're making a different decision than we made previously, we have to explain why it's harmful when the digital board was not harmful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. Martin, your turn now.
Yeah, well, I don't feel obliged to stand up personally for a decision that was made on a committee I wasn't on. So I'm going to stand on principle and object to this for all the reasons that have been given. I don't need to learn it. We talk a lot about air and noise pollution. We also have light and visual pollution to consider as well. And a lot of cars turn out of that station and the warehouse shops that are next to it and the garage and onto that main road. And if a big signboard is up there, it is inappropriate in my view. And so I'll be voting against it.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Simon wants to come in now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members, just so you're aware, when you're having your debate discussion and you're evaluating your decision on this application, you've got two reasons to consider under the advertisement regulations. You've got public safety. So what impact does the sighting of an advert in that location have on the public safety of users of the adjoining public highway? And then you've got visual impact. Again, as has been clarified, a signboard of a similar size has already been considered acceptable by the planning authority. So therefore, that's the baseline for your judgment on those two issues.
Okay, thank you, Simon. We've got Edric next, and I will remind members that we've got in a maximum of 10 minutes left.
Thank you. I'd just like to clarify, how big is the pre-approved illuminated signboard? And how is it illuminated? Is it one of these internally illuminated ones? Okay, so if that's the fallback position of this council in relation to not approving this thing and fallback to illuminated board, I hear everything that's said. I'm not happy about it at all. But the fallback position is they could fall back to a large illuminated one. As a cyclist and a pedestrian, I think I've got more chance to be seen if I'm riding from Froome Station at Eric Knight with my bicycle lights against this plain unilluminated board than I have against an illuminated one. So I'll be voting for it.
Just to clarify, Vice Chair, this proposal is illuminated as a trough light.
It's not.
But yeah, just
it's not backlit.
That's right. So, just the strip light.
Yeah, that's yeah. I understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Shane, did I see your hand go up again?
Just to make clear to the board, when the digital billboard was agreed, that was on officer's decision. It didn't come to planning, and that's why all the local residents were infuriated because they never got a letter to say this is going to happen. We had 70 people out at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning complaining about it. We had a petition of more than 300 people. Now, so they said they were going to withdraw it or not enact it. So it doesn't mean that if we say no to this, they will automatically go to the digital one. And I really want to make that clear. It's not a one or the other. It can be neither. And just to reiterate again, it's going to be as bright as your laptop. And again, local residents don't know about it. So can I propose, or do I have to wait?
No, Shane, if you want to propose now.
I'd like to propose refusal, please.
Okay.
On behalf of an officer again. Contrary to some opinion in this room, I've just been given information, as I obviously sit between the officers and the chair, that side notices were posted, and there was it 7 comments, 7 responses from David?
So 7 letters of notification to neighbours adjacent to the site were sent, plus a site notice. And in response to that, there were a series of objections that were received. So again, just looking from the system, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals, as well as the civic society, as well as the parish council, as well as the ward members.
Is it correct, soon to clarify this to me, that it's only immediate neighbours of the boundary which have to be consulted? I get the letters of notification, is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct, yes. So just so you think that why didn't I get notification? I live in the area 100 yards away. It's only people who have an immediate boundary, because I quite often get this when I have planning, was I didn't know about it. If you're across the road without an immediate boundary, you don't necessarily or have to legally get a notification. Is that correct?
Okay, thank you. I'm in a bit of a hurry now. I've got 5 minutes left to get the vote done. Martin's coming in first here.
That's okay. Just to clarify with Councillor Collins, Mr. Trafford mentioned earlier there were basically two elements of a refusal, which was public safety and visual impact. Are you going on both of those? Right. Okay. And then just to say, Chair, that would need to be seconded before we get to.
For that now, we need a seconder for Shane, which we've got.
There's been a mistake, there's been an error.
Yeah, but apologies in terms of what I've just said, Chairman. I was reading the wrong screen on the case record, so no neighbour notifications were sent out, but a site notice was erected. And again, just for clarification, there isn't a statutory requirement to consult on advertisement applications. So I do apologise.
Right, I can take at least one more. Claire?
Excuse me, I go to Dawn. Dawn hasn't spoken all evening. Would Claire mind if
Well,
Dawn spoke?
well, I've got Claire first, so see Claire go quickly.
I just wanted to second that.
You do, yeah, I thought that's what you were going to say, to be honest. Okay, Claire?
So was I, but I was going to say that it might not be their fallback decision. They might actually get the message, and I think we need to send the message and just not make a bad decision worse. So I'm going to support refusing this planning application.
Okay, thank you. And Dawn, you're the official seconder. Okay. Right, I'm going to move now to the vote.
Just one quick point.
Tessa, you want to come in?
Just it's worth members noting that in the planning inspector's guidance on unreasonable behaviour, inconsistent decision making is one of those. So we could be subject to cost and appeal. So just give members that message, really. Thank you.
Okay, Martin, you can have the last word.
If we do approve this, could we apply a condition that the illumination is time restricted and that it's a part of the night, it's not on?
Okay, we're going to go to the vote. Shane, your thing is seconded by Dawn. Would you like to speak it out, please, to the members before we vote?
Yes, I would like to recommend refusal on grounds of amenity and transport safety. By amenity, I mean visual amenity. Doesn't look the part.
Okay, I'm not going to make any comments. Okay, all those in favour of Shane's proposal? 6. All those against? 5. And abstentions? 1. I believe that is the end of our business, and we've made it with just about 2 minutes to spare. And because really we should be going at 6, but our comfort break counts.